What if Harry swallowed a Bezoar as a baby and became immune to every poison in Cursed Chapter 1, the boy who couldn't be cursed baby Harry Potter was having the time of his life. At 15 months old, crawling was old news, and walking was his new superpower. While his mum prepared dinner downstairs, Harry had managed to push open the bedroom door his dad had left slightly ajar. Freedom. The bedroom was a treasure trove of fascinating objects for a curious toddler. Harry giggled as he pulled himself up using the bedside table, his green eyes fixed on his dad's emergency kit. James Potter, ever the cautious orer, kept a small wooden box of essential potions and magical remedies for unexpected situations. Harry's tiny fingers worked at the unlocked latch. James had never expected his son to reach the bedside table so soon. The box popped open, revealing colorful vials and strange objects. One smooth, round stone caught Harry's attention. It looked like the pebbles he'd played with in the garden, but shinier. "What's that you've got, Harry?" Lily's voice called from the doorway. She rushed over as Harry popped the strange rock into his mouth. "No. Harry, spit that out." Lily reached him in 3 quick strides, fingers gently prying at his mouth, but it was too late. Harry had swallowed the Bezoar whole. "James!" Lily shouted, panic rising. "Harry just swallowed something from your kit." James thundered up the stairs, wand already drawn. "What was it?" "A stone of some kind," Lily said, checking Harry's mouth for any remaining pieces. James peered into his kit, then let out a relieved breath. "It's just a Bezoar. It's harmless, actually, it's an antidote to most poisons. Healers say they dissolve completely. He'll be fine." Lily held Harry close, her heart still racing. "You're sure?" "Positive," James assured her, ruffling Harry's unruly black hair. "Though maybe we should child-proof my aura equipment a bit better, yeah." Harry just giggled, completely unaware that the strange stone now dissolving in his system would forever change his destiny. 3 days later, on Halloween night, Harry was tucked into bed after an evening of James entertaining him with colorful puffs of smoke from his wand. "He'll be a natural flyer," James said proudly as Lily came to collect their son for bedtime. "Did you see how he tried to catch the smoke? Seeker reflexes already." Lily rolled her eyes fondly at her husband's Quidditch obsession. "He's not getting on a broom until he's at least 3, and that's final." As she carried Harry upstairs, she felt an odd shiver. The protection spells around their cottage remained intact, but something felt wrong. She held Harry a little tighter and whispered to him as she tucked him into his crib. "Mummy loves you. Daddy loves you. You are so loved, Harry." The words felt strangely significant, though she couldn't say why. She kissed his forehead and turned on the magical mobile above his crib, tiny golden snitches that flew in gentle circles, emitting soft light. Downstairs, she heard James drop his wand on the sofa, a habit she'd scolded him for repeatedly. Before she could call down to remind him about constant vigilance, the front door burst open. "Lily, take Harry, and go. It's him. Go. Run. I'll hold him off." The next few minutes passed in a blur of terror. James, wandless, falling to a flash of green light. Lily barricading herself in the nursery, desperately wishing for her wand, which lay downstairs on the kitchen counter. The door blasting open. A tall, hooded figure with gleaming red eyes. "Not Harry, please not Harry." Lily begged, standing in front of the crib. "Stand aside, you silly girl, stand aside now," the cold voice commanded. "Not Harry, please no, take me, kill me instead, this is my last warning, not Harry. Please, have mercy, have mercy. Not Harry. Not Harry. Please, I'll do anything. Stand aside, girl." Lily remained in front of her son, arms spread wide. She felt the killing curse hit her chest before she saw the green light, her last thought a fierce, primal surge of love for her son. Voldemort approached the crib, looking down at the child who supposedly threatened his power. The boy wasn't crying, merely staring up at him with curious green eyes, so like his mother's. Avada Kedavra. Green light erupted from his wand, striking the child's forehead, but instead of killing him instantly, something extraordinary happened. The light seemed to hesitate, swirling around the boy, who finally began to cry from the pain of a lightning-shaped cut appearing on his forehead. Then, impossibly, the killing curse rebounded, slamming back into Voldemort with the force of a physical blow. Pain beyond imagination tore through him as his body disintegrated, his soul ripped from its physical anchor. The cottage shook with the magical backlash, the ceiling beginning to collapse. As Voldemort's wraith fled, the protection created by Lily's sacrifice, reinforced by the dissolved Bezoar in Harry's system, settled into the boy's blood, bones, and magic. In his crib, surrounded by debris, Harry Potter cried from the pain in his forehead, unaware that he had just become the boy who lived, and the boy who couldn't be cursed. 6 years later, 7-year-old Harry Potter crouched in the garden shed behind number 4, Privet Drive, hiding from Dudley and his friends. Their favorite game, Harry hunting, had taken a darker turn lately. Last week, Piers Polkiss had brought a pocket knife, suggesting they just nick him a little, to teach Harry a lesson for being a freak. Harry had escaped by somehow ending up on the school roof, another freakish incident that had earned him a week locked in his cupboard. The shed door rattled. Harry held his breath. "I know you're in there, Potter," Dudley called. "Malcolm's got firecrackers today. We're gonna see if your freak skin burns." Harry pressed himself deeper into the corner behind Uncle Vernon's lawnmower. The door burst open, and Dudley's gang poured in, Malcolm waving a package of firecrackers triumphantly. "Got you." Piers grabbed Harry's arm, yanking him forward. "Hold him down." Harry struggled as two boys pinned his arms while Malcolm lit a firecracker with the lighter he'd stolen from his older brother. "This'll be brilliant," Dudley grinned, his piggy eyes gleaming with malice. "Throw it at his face, Malcolm." Malcolm tossed the lit firecracker directly at Harry's chest. Harry closed his eyes, bracing for pain. The firecracker exploded against his t-shirt with a deafening bang. But Harry felt nothing. No pain, no burning, not even heat. He opened his eyes to see the other boys staring in shock. His shirt had a singed hole, but his skin beneath was completely unmarked. "What the?" Malcolm stepped back. "That should have burned him." "Do it again," Dudley demanded, his face flushing with anger. Malcolm lit another firecracker and this time aimed directly at Harry's exposed arm. Again, the explosion made Harry flinch, but left him completely unharmed. "I told you he's a freak," Dudley shouted, suddenly afraid. "Let's go." The gang fled, leaving Harry alone in the shed, staring at his unblemished skin where burns should have been. This wasn't the first strange incident. Last month, Aunt Petunia had forced him to clean the bathroom with caustic chemicals that had made her own hands red and raw when she'd forgotten her rubber gloves. Harry's hands had remained perfectly fine, despite working without protection. And there was the time Uncle Vernon had grabbed the hot frying pan in a rage and pressed it against Harry's arm after he'd accidentally burned the bacon. The pan had left soot marks on his skin that washed away, revealing healthy skin underneath. Harry examined himself carefully. The only mark on his body that never healed was the lightning-shaped scar on his forehead, the one Aunt Petunia claimed he'd gotten in the car crash that killed his parents. Whatever was happening, Harry knew better than to mention it to the Dursleys. They already called him a freak for the other strange things that happened around him. This would just give them another reason to fear and hate him. But alone in the shed, Harry allowed himself a small, secret smile. The Dursleys could lock him in his cupboard, starve him, and make him do endless chores, but somehow, he was protected from physical harm. It was like having an invisible shield. A shield that was his and his alone. Harry's immunity to physical harm continued to manifest in increasingly obvious ways. By age 10, Dudley's gang had given up trying to hurt him directly, spreading rumors instead that he was some kind of demon or monster. The Dursleys grew more frightened with each incident. When Harry suffered no ill effects from accidentally drinking spoiled milk that had Vernon running to the bathroom all night. When he emerged completely dry after Dudley pushed him into the deep end of the pool on a school trip, despite not knowing how to swim. When he walked through a patch of stinging nettles barefoot on a forced garden weeding session and showed no reaction whatsoever. "That boy isn't natural," Vernon would mutter to Petunia when they thought Harry couldn't hear. Always knew those freakish parents of his would pass down something unnatural. The Dursleys' fear manifested as even harsher treatment, as if they were trying to compensate for their inability to physically hurt him. Harry was locked in his cupboard more frequently, given less food, assigned more chores, and verbally belittled at every opportunity. But Harry had developed a resilience that went beyond his physical immunity. He'd learned to find joy in small moments of freedom, to treasure the books he sneaked from school, and to believe that someday, somehow, his life would change. That change came with a letter, or rather, hundreds of letters, culminating in a giant man named Hagrid bursting through the door of a miserable shack on a rocky island during a thunderstorm. "Harry, you're a wizard." Those 4 simple words transformed everything Harry thought he knew about himself. His parents hadn't died in a car crash, they'd been murdered by a dark wizard named Voldemort. His lightning scar wasn't from broken glass but from surviving a killing curse. And the strange things that happened around him, including his immunity to harm, were magic. "Yeah, survived when no one else ever has," Hagrid told him, his beetle-black eyes shining with emotion. "That's why you're famous, Harry. The boy who lived." Harry absorbed this information with a mixture of shock and vindication. "So, the weird things that happen to me, like when things don't hurt me when they should, that's because I'm a wizard?" Hagrid frowned slightly. "What do ya mean, things don't hurt ya?" Harry explained about the firecrackers, the chemicals, the hot pan, and dozens of other incidents. Hagrid's eyes grew progressively wider. "Blimey, Harry. That's not normal, even for wizards. I mean, we're hardier than muggles, heal faster and all, but what you're describing." He scratched his wild beard thoughtfully. "Dumbledore will want to know about this. He always said there was something special about how you survived that night." "Who's Dumbledore?" "Greatest wizard alive. Headmaster of Hogwarts, that's the school you're going to. He's the one who left ya with these." Hagrid glared at the Dursleys, who were cowering in the corner. "These people." Harry felt a surge of anger at this Dumbledore person for leaving him with the Dursleys, but it was quickly overwhelmed by excitement about attending a school for wizards. A place where he might finally belong. "When do we leave?" Harry asked, already mentally packing his meager possessions. Hagrid beamed. "Right now, if ya like. Got ter get your school supplies in Diagon Alley. Ye'll love it there, Harry, and wait till ye see Gringotts, the wizard bank. Run by goblins, it is." Harry smiled, properly smiled, for what felt like the first time in years. Whatever this immunity was that protected him, wherever it came from, he was finally going to learn about it. He was going to learn about magic. About his parents. About himself. He was going to Hogwarts. Diagon Alley was everything Harry had never dared to imagine, bustling with witches and wizards in flowing robes, shops selling cauldrons and broomsticks and magic wands, owls soaring overhead delivering packages and letters. But more astonishing than the magical surroundings was the way people reacted to him. They recognized him. Strangers shook his hand in the leaky cauldron, a tearful which thanked him for what he'd done, and Professor Quirrell, a nervous man in a purple turban who would be teaching defense against the dark arts, actually trembled when introducing himself. Fascinating subject, Quirrell stammered when Harry asked about his class. "And not that you need it, P.P. Potter." His eyes lingered on Harry's scar, and Harry felt an unexpected twinge of pain. The most unsettling encounter, however, came at Ollivander's wand shop. The pale-eyed wand-maker examined Harry with unnerving intensity before measuring him and presenting wand after wand for him to try. Curious, Ollivander muttered when a holly and phoenix feather wand finally chose Harry in a shower of red and gold sparks. Very curious. Sorry, said Harry, but what's curious? I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. Every single wand. It so happens that the phoenix whose tail feather is in your wand, gave another feather, just one other. It is very curious indeed that you should be destined for this wand when its brother, why, its brother gave you that scar. Harry swallowed, suddenly cold despite the warm shop. And who owned that wand? We do not speak his name. The wand chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter. I think we must expect great things from you. After all, he who must not be named did great things, terrible, yes, but great. As Hagrid led him from the shop, Harry noticed the giant man watching him with a strange expression. What is it, Hagrid? Nothing, just, there's something different about ya, Harry. Ollivander saw it too. It's not just the scar or the fame. There's a resilience to your magic. I felt it when the wand chose ya. Almost like. Like what? Hagrid shook his head. Like you're protected somehow. Beyond what your mum did for ya that night. He patted Harry's shoulder gently. Don't worry about it now. Let's get ya an ice cream, eh? That night in his cupboard, the last night he'd ever have to sleep there, Harry examined his new wand by the dim light filtering through the vent. Brother to Voldemort's wand. Chosen for a boy immune to harm. What did it mean? I'll find out at Hogwarts, he whispered to himself. For the first time in his life, Harry Potter had something incredible to look forward to. Platform 9 3/4 was packed with students and parents when Harry arrived, pushing his trolley nervously. Thanks to a family of redheads, the Weasleys, he'd managed to find the hidden entrance, running through what appeared to be a solid brick wall. After stowing his trunk with help from the Weasley twins, Fred and George, Harry found an empty compartment and settled in, gazing out the window at families saying goodbye. A pang of loneliness hit him, watching mothers hugging their children, fathers giving last-minute advice. The compartment door slid open, and the youngest Weasley boy peered in. Anyone sitting there? He asked, pointing to the seat opposite Harry. Everywhere else is full. Go ahead, Harry invited, relieved to have company. I'm Ron. Ron Weasley, the boy said, settling in. Harry Potter. Ron's eyes widened. So it's true. Do you really have the, you know? He pointed at his own forehead. Harry lifted his fringe to reveal the lightning scar. Wicked, Ron breathed. And is it true you lived with Muggles? What were they like? Horrible, Harry said. Well, not all Muggles. Just my aunt, uncle, and cousin. They hate magic. Mental, Ron shook his head. Hey, want to see something cool? My brother gave me a spell to turn my rat yellow. He pulled out a worn wand and a sleeping rat from his pocket. Before Ron could attempt the spell, the compartment door opened again. A girl with bushy brown hair and rather large front teeth stood there, already wearing her Hogwarts robes. Has anyone seen a toad? A boy named Neville's lost one. Her voice was bossy and matter-of-fact. No toads here, Ron said, annoyed at the interruption. The girl's attention shifted to the wand in Ron's hand. Oh, are you doing magic? Let's see, then. Ron looked taken aback but cleared his throat. Sunshine, daisies, buttermellow, turn this stupid, fat rat yellow. He waved his wand, but nothing happened. Are you sure that's a real spell? The girl asked skeptically. It's not very good, is it? I've tried a few simple spells just for practice and they've all worked for me. She sat down next to Harry. I'm Hermione Granger, by the way. And you are? Ron Weasley. Harry Potter. Hermione's eyes widened. Are you really? I know all about you, of course, I got a few extra books for background reading, and you're in modern magical history and the rise and fall of the dark arts and great wizarding events of the 20th century. I am. Harry felt dazed. Goodness, didn't you know? I'd have found out everything I could if it was me, she said. Do either of you know what house you'll be in? I've been asking around, and I hope I'm in Gryffindor. It sounds by far the best. Anyway, I'd better go look for Neville's toad. You two should change into your robes, I expect we'll be arriving soon. She left, closing the door behind her. Whatever house she's in, I hope I'm not in it, Ron muttered, putting his wand away. Mental, that one. My brothers say the spell was a joke anyway. Harry relaxed as Ron explained about the 4 Hogwarts houses and his family's history in Gryffindor. The conversation moved to Quidditch, wizard chess, and the strange assortment of sweets from the trolley which, including chocolate frogs with famous wizard cards and Bertie Bott's every flavor beans. When Harry bit into a suspicious-looking green bean, Ron warned, careful, could be bogey-flavored. But Harry chewed and swallowed without reaction. Tastes like grass, actually. Not bad. Ron watched, impressed, as Harry tried beans that made him grimace from the flavor but never spit one out. Blimey, you've got a stomach of steel. That last one was definitely sardine. Harry shrugged. Nothing seemed to affect him physically, not even disgustingly flavored candy. It was just another aspect of his strange immunity. Their peaceful journey was interrupted when the compartment door slid open yet again. 3 boys entered, a pale, pointed-faced boy flanked by 2 large, mean-looking companions. Is it true? The pale boy asked. They're saying all down the train that Harry Potter's in this compartment. So it's you, is it? Yes, Harry answered, sizing up the newcomers. This is Crabbe and Goyle, the boy said casually. And my name's Malfoy, Draco Malfoy. Ron gave a slight cough, which might have been hiding a snigger. Draco Malfoy shot him a look. Think my name's funny, do you? No need to ask who you are. My father told me all the Weasleys have red hair, freckles, and more children than they can afford. He turned back to Harry. You'll soon find out some wizarding families are much better than others, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there. He extended his hand to shake Harry's, but Harry didn't take it. I think I can tell who the wrong sort are for myself, thanks, he said coolly. Draco Malfoy's pale cheeks flushed pink. I'd be careful if I were you, Potter. Unless you're a bit politer, you'll go the same way as your parents. They didn't know what was good for them either. You hang around with riffraff like the Weasleys, and it'll rub off on you. Both Harry and Ron stood up. Ron's face was as red as his hair. Say that again, Ron challenged. Oh, you're going to fight us, are you? Malfoy sneered. Harry felt strangely calm. After years of dealing with Dudley's gang, these 3 didn't scare him. Unless you get out now, he said, more confidently than he felt. Goyle reached for a chocolate frog next to Ron, and suddenly howled in pain. Scabbers, Ron's rat, was hanging from his finger by sharp little teeth. Goyle swung Scabbers round and round, howling, until the rat finally flew off and hit the window. The 3 boys disappeared at once. Hermione Granger reappeared, looking disapproving. What has been going on? Just a little disagreement, Harry said, sitting back down. But internally, he was glowing with satisfaction. For the first time in his life, he'd stood up for himself, and for a friend. The sorting ceremony was unlike anything Harry had imagined. The great hall's enchanted ceiling reflected a starry night sky, thousands of candles floated in midair, and 4 long tables were filled with students watching as first years were called one by one to sit on a stool and place the ancient sorting hat on their heads. When it was Harry's turn, whispers broke out across the hall. Potter, did she say? The Harry Potter? The hat dropped over his eyes, and a small voice spoke in his ear. Difficult. Very difficult. Plenty of courage, I see. Not a bad mind either. There's talent, oh my goodness, yes, and a nice thirst to prove yourself, now that's interesting. But what's this? The hat seemed to pause, considering something unexpected. Curious magic you carry, Mr. Potter. An immunity I've not seen in centuries. Not since, well. Fascinating. This changes things, doesn't it? With protection like yours, you could do well in Slytherin, their cunning would complement your natural defenses. Harry gripped the edges of the stool and thought, not Slytherin, not Slytherin. Not Slytherin, eh? Are you sure? With your immunity and their ambition, you could be truly great, you know, it's all here in your head, and Slytherin will help you on the way to greatness, no doubt about that, no? Well, if you're sure, better be Gryffindor. The Gryffindor table exploded with cheers. Harry, relieved, joined his new housemates, including the Weasley twins who were chanting, "We got Potter. We got Potter." As the feast appeared magically on the golden plates, Harry found himself genuinely happy for the first time he could remember. He caught Professor McGonagall's eye and she gave him a rare smile. Then he glanced at the high table and noticed a hook-nosed, black-haired professor staring at him with an expression of intense dislike. "Who's that teacher talking to Professor Quirrell?" he asked Percy Weasley, Ron's older brother. "That's Professor Snape. Head of Slytherin House. Teaches potions, but everyone knows he's after Quirrell's job. Knows an awful lot about the dark arts, Snape." As Harry watched, Snape's eyes bored into his, and a sharp, hot pain shot across the scar on his forehead. It was the first real pain Harry had felt in years, and it took him by surprise. Ouch! He clapped a hand to his head. "What is it?" asked Percy. "And nothing." The pain had gone as quickly as it had come. Later that night, as Harry settled into his four-poster bed in Gryffindor Tower, he couldn't help wondering about the hat's words. What immunity was it talking about? And why had his scar hurt when he looked at Snape? Whatever was happening, Harry felt certain of one thing as he drifted off to sleep: Hogwarts held the answers he'd been seeking his entire life. Potions class provided the first real test of Harry's strange immunity. In the dungeon classroom, Professor Snape made his dislike of Harry abundantly clear from the first roll call. "Ah, yes," he said softly, "Harry Potter. Our new celebrity." After belittling Harry with impossible questions about advanced potions ingredients, Snape paired the students for their first practical lesson, a simple potion to cure boils. "Potter." Snape snapped halfway through the class. "What color should your potion be at this stage?" Harry glanced at his cauldron, where the liquid was a shade too dark. "Light blue, sir." "And what color is yours?" "Navy blue, sir." "Clearly, fame isn't everything," Snape sneered. "Test it." Harry blinked. "Sir. You heard me, Potter. If you're so confident in your brewing abilities, test your potion. 1 drop on your hand should be sufficient." Hermione gasped from across the room. "Professor, the instructions say an improperly brewed potion could cause severe..." "Silence, Miss Granger." Snape barked. "Well, Potter? We're waiting." The classroom went deathly quiet. Every student knew an improperly brewed boil-cure potion could cause painful boils instead of curing them. Snape was essentially asking Harry to harm himself. Harry met Snape's eyes steadily. Then, without breaking eye contact, he dipped his finger into the potion and smeared a generous amount across the back of his hand. Nothing happened. No boils, no pain, not even a tingle. His skin remained perfectly unmarked. Snape's face contorted with surprise, then suspicion. "Did you use a protection charm, Potter? That's cheating." "No, sir," Harry replied truthfully. "I don't know any protection charms yet." "Impossible," Snape muttered, examining Harry's hand. "Your potion is clearly incorrect." To prove his point, Snape used a dropper to place a tiny amount of Harry's potion onto a piece of parchment. The parchment immediately erupted in angry red boils. The class gasped collectively. Snape's eyes narrowed to slits. "Stay after class, Potter." When the lesson ended, Harry approached Snape's desk, mentally preparing for punishment. But instead of detention, Snape asked a question that took Harry completely by surprise. "Have you always been resistant to harm, Potter?" Harry hesitated, then nodded. "For as long as I can remember, sir. Things that should hurt me just don't." Snape studied him with an unreadable expression. "Your mother was exceptionally gifted at protection charms and potions. Perhaps." He stopped himself, then said curtly, "Tell no one about this ability. There are those who would seek to test its limits in ways you cannot imagine. Now get out." Harry left, puzzled by the interaction. Had Snape just tried to protect him? And what did his mother have to do with his immunity? The mystery deepened in the following weeks. In Charms class, when Harry accidentally pointed his wand at himself while practicing the levitation charm, he rose gently into the air instead of experiencing the painful side effects Professor Flitwick had warned about. In herbology, venomous tentacula leaves that caused welts on other students' skin merely tickled Harry's palms. Even in flying lessons, when he took a nasty fall from his broom while showing off for Ron, he bounced slightly and stood up completely unhurt. Each incident drew attention Harry didn't want: curious glances from classmates, whispers in the corridors, and increasingly pointed questions from Hermione. "It's not normal, Harry," she insisted one evening in the common room. "I've been researching magical protections, and nothing explains what happens with you. Even the most powerful shield charms have limitations." "Maybe it's connected to how I survived Voldemort," Harry suggested, ignoring Ron's wince at the name. "That's what I thought too, but..." Hermione bit her lip. "The killing curse doesn't just harm you physically, it separates your soul from your body. No physical immunity should stop that." Ron, who'd been listening quietly, suddenly sat up straighter. "What if it's not the same thing that saved him from you-know-who? What if it's something else entirely?" Harry and Hermione looked at him, surprised. "Think about it," Ron continued. "Everyone talks about how Harry survived the killing curse because of his mum's protection. But what if this immunity thing is different? What if it's why Quirrell's jinx couldn't knock Harry off his broom at the Quidditch match? What if it's why Snape's potion didn't hurt him?" Hermione's eyes widened. "Ron, that's brilliant. Two separate protections." Harry wasn't sure what to think. All he knew was that his life at Hogwarts was becoming increasingly complicated, between classes, Quidditch practice, avoiding Filch after curfew, and now the mystery of the three-headed dog they'd accidentally discovered guarding a trapdoor on the third floor. "Whatever it is, we need to be careful," Harry said, lowering his voice. "Snape warned me not to tell anyone about this. He said there are people who would want to test how far it goes." "Too late for that," Ron muttered, nodding toward a group of older Slytherins watching them from across the Great Hall. "Pretty sure the whole school knows something's off about you by now." He wasn't wrong. The following day, in defense against the dark arts, Professor Quirrell seemed especially interested in Harry, calling him to the front of the class to demonstrate a simple shield charm. "Most F first years C can't P produce an effective S shield," Quirrell explained. But let's see if Mr. P. Potter is as exceptional as they say." When Harry failed to produce more than a faint shimmer with the charm, Quirrell surprised everyone by casting a mild stinging hex directly at Harry. The hex hit Harry square in the chest, and dissipated completely. Fascinating," Quirrell murmured, his stutter mysteriously less pronounced. No shield charm, yet the hex had no effect. His pale eyes fixed on Harry with an intensity that made Harry's scar burn. "I wonder what other spells you might naturally resist, Mr. Potter." After that, Harry noticed Quirrell watching him constantly, during meals, in the corridors, even through windows when Harry practiced Quidditch. It was unsettling, especially paired with the persistent pain in his scar whenever the professor was nearby. "I don't trust him," Harry told Ron and Hermione as they researched Nicholas Flamel in the library. "There's something off about him." Because he stutters? Ron asked skeptically. No, because. Harry hesitated. Because my scar hurts when he's around. And he's too interested in my immunity. Hermione closed her book with a thump. I still think Snape is the one we should worry about. He was trying to get past that three-headed dog on Halloween, remember? He's after whatever it's guarding. But what if they're working together? Harry suggested. What if they both want whatever's under that trapdoor? Before they could discuss further, Hagrid appeared from behind a bookshelf, hiding something behind his back. What are you three up to? He asked suspiciously. You're not still looking for Nicholas Flamel, are ya? We found out who he is ages ago, Ron said importantly. And we know what that dog's guarding, it's a philosopher's SH. Hagrid looked around quickly. Don, go shoutin' about it. Come and see me later. I'm not promisin' I'll tell ya anythin', but Don, go rabbitin' about it in here. As Hagrid shuffled away, Hermione grabbed the book he'd been hiding. Dragons. Hagrid was looking up information on dragons. That afternoon, they discovered why. Hagrid had somehow acquired a dragon egg, which he was keeping in his wooden hut, apparently oblivious to the fire hazard. Isn't it beautiful? Hagrid crooned, stoking the fire under the enormous black egg. Norwegian ridgeback, they are. Rare, them. Hagrid, you live in a wooden house, Hermione pointed out. But Hagrid wasn't listening. He was too busy explaining how he'd won the egg from a stranger in a pub, who'd seemed unusually interested in Fluffy, the three-headed dog guarding the philosopher's stone. He wanted to know how to handle Fluffy, so I told him, the trick with any beast is to know how to calm it. Take Fluffy, for example, play him a bit music and he falls straight to sleep. Hagrid looked horrified at what he'd just revealed. I shouldn't ha' told ya that. Forget I said it. But the three friends exchanged significant looks. Someone had deliberately gotten Hagrid drunk to extract information about Fluffy, and now they knew music was the key to getting past the Guardian. Their concerns about the stone temporarily took a back seat to the immediate problem of Hagrid's dragon, which hatched a week later and grew with alarming speed. When the dragon, named Norbert, bit Ron's hand, causing it to swell to twice its normal size, they convinced Hagrid to send the creature to Romania with Charlie Weasley's Dragon Keeper friends. The plan went sideways when Malfoy discovered the dragon and reported them, resulting in detention for Harry, Hermione, and Neville, who tried to warn them. Their punishment, accompanying Hagrid into the Forbidden Forest to investigate something killing unicorns. Split into two groups, Harry found himself paired with Malfoy and Fawn, Hagrid's boarhound. Deep in the forest, they discovered a unicorn lying dead on the ground, and a hooded figure drinking its blood. Malfoy screamed and bolted with Fawn, but Harry remained frozen in place as white-hot pain seared across his scar, worse than he'd ever experienced. The hooded figure raised its head and looked straight at Harry, silvery unicorn blood dribbling down its front. Harry's immunity didn't help with the pain in his scar. He staggered backward as the figure approached, only to be saved by the arrival of a centaur named Firenze, who drove the creature away and carried Harry back to Hagrid. That was Voldemort, Harry told his friends later in the common room. Firenze said unicorn blood keeps you alive even if you're an inch from death, but at a terrible price. Voldemort's trying to stay alive until he can steal the stone and make the elixir of life. So all this time we've been worried about Snape or Quirrell, Hermione whispered, but it's actually you-know-who wants the stone. And he's at Hogwarts, Ron added, looking pale. Right now. Harry nodded grimly. Which means we need to get to it first. Their opportunity came during final exams week. As they exited their History of Magic exam, Harry suddenly realized something crucial. We've been so stupid, he told Ron and Hermione. The stranger who gave Hagrid the dragon egg, that was either Snape or Quirrell. And Hagrid told them how to get past Fluffy. They raced to Hagrid's hut, where their worst fears were confirmed. The stranger who'd given Hagrid the egg had been unusually interested in Hogwarts security measures, and Hagrid, blinded by his desire for a dragon, had happily shared everything he knew. He must have been from the school. Hagrid defended himself. He knew about Fluffy, after all. Back in the castle, the trio made a desperate attempt to warn Dumbledore, only to discover the headmaster had been called away to London. He's gone. Now. Harry couldn't believe their bad luck. But this is important. It's about the philosopher's stone. Professor McGonagall dropped the books she was carrying. How do you know? Someone's going to try and steal it. Today. McGonagall looked at them with a mixture of shock and suspicion. I don't know how you found out about the stone, but rest assured, no one can possibly steal it. It's too well protected. But Professor Potter, I know what I'm talking about. Now go outside and enjoy the sunshine. Realizing the adults wouldn't help, Harry made a decision. I'm going through that trapdoor tonight. I can't let Voldemort get the stone. You're mad. Ron exclaimed. I'll go with you, Hermione said firmly. Ron sighed. Well, you can't stop Voldemort without me, can you? That night, as they prepared to sneak out under Harry's invisibility cloak, they encountered their first obstacle, Neville Longbottom. You can't go out, he insisted, blocking the portrait hole. You'll get Gryffindor in trouble again. In the end, it took a regretful full-body bind curse from Hermione to get past their well-meaning friend. Then it was off to the third-floor corridor, where Fluffy awaited. They arrived to find the door already open and an enchanted harp playing softly, lulling the massive three-headed dog to sleep. Snape or Quirrell's already been here, Harry whispered. Come on, before the music stops. They slipped past the sleeping dog and through the trapdoor, landing on something soft in the darkness below, a gigantic plant with snaking tendrils that immediately began wrapping around their legs. It's Devil's Snare. Hermione identified. We need fire. As Ron struggled and became more entangled, Harry remained perfectly calm, noting that the plant seemed unable to constrict him properly. Hermione, use your bluebell flames. The blue fire drove the plant away from Ron and Hermione, but Harry noticed he hadn't needed the rescue. The Devil's Snare's grip on him had been ineffective from the start, another manifestation of his immunity. The next chamber contained flying keys and broomsticks. Harry, using his seeker skills, quickly captured the correct key, allowing them to proceed to a giant wizard's chessboard, where Ron took command. I need to be a knight, Ron decided, analyzing the board. Harry, you take the place of that bishop, and Hermione, you go there instead of that castle. Ron's strategic brilliance led them through the game, but victory came at a cost. He sacrificed himself to the White Queen so Harry could checkmate the king. Ron! Hermione screamed as he was knocked unconscious. Don't move. Harry commanded. We're still playing. He moved 3 spaces to the left. Checkmate. With the White King throwing down his crown, Harry and Hermione rushed to Ron's side. He's just knocked out, Harry determined. You stay with him. I'll go on. But Harry, there's no time, Hermione. I can handle whatever's next. Remember, things don't hurt me like they do other people. Reluctantly, Hermione agreed, hugging him tightly before he entered the next chamber alone. A foul smell greeted him, and an unconscious troll even larger than the one they'd faced on Halloween. Grateful he didn't have to fight it, Harry proceeded to the next chamber, where flames immediately sprang up, blocking both the entrance and exit. A table held 7 differently shaped bottles and a parchment with a logic puzzle. Harry read it carefully, then identified the smallest bottle as the one that would allow him to proceed through the black flames ahead. There was barely enough potion for one swallow. Taking a deep breath, Harry drank it, expecting the usual result, his immunity protecting him from any ill effects. To his surprise, he felt ice flood his body. It worked, he whispered, astonished. Not everything was blocked by his immunity, then. Stepping forward, he walked through the black flames completely unharmed, though whether from the potion or his natural protection, he couldn't tell. In the final chamber, Harry found neither Snape nor Voldemort, but Professor Quirrell, standing calmly before the mirror of Eriste. "You!" Harry gasped. Quirrell smiled, no trace of his stutter. "Me. I wondered if I'd be meeting you here, Potter. But I thought, Snape, Severus." Quirrell laughed coldly. "Yes, he does seem the type, doesn't he? Next to him, who would suspect P.P. Poor, St. stuttering P. Professor Quirrell?" With a snap of Quirrell's fingers, rope sprang out of thin air and wrapped around Harry, but unlike the devil's snare, these magical bonds held him fast. His immunity, it seemed, had limitations. "Now wait quietly, Potter, while I examine this mirror. It's the key to finding the stone." As Quirrell muttered to himself about seeing the stone in the mirror but not how to get it, Harry struggled against his bonds, trying to distract the professor. "I saw you and Snape in the forest, yes," Quirrell said idly. "He suspected me all along, kept trying to frighten me. As if he could, when I had Lord Voldemort on my side." A voice suddenly spoke, though Quirrell's lips weren't moving. "Use the boy. Use the boy." Quirrell rounded on Harry. "Yes, Potter, come here." He clapped his hands, and the ropes fell away. "Look in the mirror and tell me what you see." Harry walked toward the mirror, preparing to lie about whatever he saw. But as he gazed into the glass, he saw his reflection smile and put its hand in its pocket, pulling out a blood-red stone. His reflection winked and put the stone back, and Harry felt the real stone drop into his actual pocket. "Well?" Quirrell demanded impatiently. "What do you see?" "I see myself shaking hands with Dumbledore," Harry invented. "I've won the House Cup for Gryffindor." Quirrell cursed and pushed him aside, but then the disembodied voice spoke again. "He lies. He lies. Potter, come back here." Quirrell shouted. "Tell me the truth. What did you see?" The voice spoke once more. "Let me speak to him, face to face." "Master, you are not strong enough. I have strength enough, for this." Harry watched, frozen in horror, as Quirrell unwrapped his turban, turning slowly on the spot. Where the back of his head should have been, there was a face, chalk white with glaring red eyes and slits for nostrils, like a snake. "Harry Potter." It whispered. "See what I have become. Mere shadow and vapor. I have form only when I can share another's body, but there have always been those willing to let me into their hearts and minds. Unicorn blood has strengthened me, these past weeks. And once I have the elixir of life, I will be able to create a body of my own. Now, why don't you give me that stone in your pocket?" Harry stumbled backward, his scar burning with white-hot pain that his immunity couldn't block. "Don't be a fool," snarled Voldemort. "Better save your own life and join me, or you'll meet the same end as your parents. They died begging me for mercy." "Liar!" Harry shouted. "How touching!" Voldemort hissed. "I always value bravery. Yes, boy, your parents were brave. I killed your father first, and he put up a courageous fight, but your mother needn't have died, she was trying to protect you. Now give me the stone, unless you want her to have died in vain." "Never." Harry sprang for the flame door, but Voldemort screamed, "Seize him," and Quirrell's hand closed on Harry's wrist. Immediately, needle-sharp pain seared through Harry's scar, but something unexpected happened where Quirrell touched his skin. Quirrell jerked his hand away, howling in agony. His fingers were blistering before their eyes. "Seize him! Seize him!" Voldemort shrieked again. Quirrell lunged, tackling Harry to the ground, hands closing around Harry's throat, but he screamed even louder and pulled away, his hands burned and raw. "Master, I cannot hold him, my hands, my hands." "Then kill him, fool, and be done," screeched Voldemort. Quirrell raised his wand for a killing curse, but Harry, acting on pure instinct, reached up and pressed his hands against Quirrell's face. The professor shrieked in agony as his skin blistered and burned beneath Harry's touch. Harry realized what was happening, Quirrell couldn't bear to touch him. His immunity wasn't just protecting him, it was actively harming his attacker. Harry lunged forward, grabbing Quirrell's arm, holding on as tightly as he could as the professor screamed and tried to throw him off. Through the pain in his scar, Harry heard Voldemort's furious, "Kill him! Kill him!" and Quirrell's agonized shrieks. He held on with all his might, even as his vision began to blur. Then, suddenly, hands were pulling him away from Quirrell, and Harry fell into darkness, the philosopher's stone still clutched tightly in his hand. Harry awoke in the hospital wing, sunlight streaming through the windows. Dumbledore was sitting beside his bed, his blue eyes twinkling. "Good afternoon, Harry," he said gently. "Sir." "The stone." It was Quirrell. "He's got the stone." "Calm yourself, dear boy, you're a little behind the times," Dumbledore said. "Quirrell does not have the stone." "Then who does?" "Nicholas and I have had a little chat and agreed it's best all around if the stone were to be destroyed." Harry listened as Dumbledore explained how he'd arrived just in time to pull Quirrell off Harry, though he emphasized that Harry had done very well on his own. When Harry asked why Quirrell couldn't touch him, Dumbledore's explanation resonated deeply. "Your mother died to save you, Harry. If there is one thing Voldemort cannot understand, it is love. He didn't realize that love as powerful as your mother's for you leaves its own mark. Not a scar, no visible sign, to have been loved so deeply, even though the person who loved us is gone, will give us some protection forever. And that's why he couldn't touch me." "Precisely. But Harry, there's something else, something even more unusual that I've observed. Something beyond your mother's protection." Harry sat up straighter. "My immunity?" Dumbledore's eyebrows rose slightly. "You've noticed it, then?" "It's hard not to notice when nothing can hurt you," Harry said. "Potions, hexes, falls, nothing affects me. Even Devil's Snare couldn't really grip me. It's been that way as long as I can remember." Dumbledore stroked his beard thoughtfully. "The Sorting Hat mentioned something curious about you. It sensed an ancient magic, not just your mother's protection, but something else. Something rare. What is it, sir? Why am I like this?" "I have a theory," Dumbledore said, "though I cannot be certain. Tell me, Harry, did anything unusual happen to you as a baby, before Voldemort's attack?" Harry thought hard, then shook his head. "I wouldn't remember, would I? I was only a year old." "No, I suppose not." Dumbledore sighed. "I shall have to research further. There are ancient forms of protection that occasionally manifest in wizards, particularly those with destinies as significant as yours. For now, I suggest you keep this ability quiet. Like your mother's protection, it saved you this time, but Voldemort is nothing if not adaptable. He will seek ways to overcome it." As Harry prepared to leave the hospital wing the next day, Madame Pomfrey gave him a final examination, marveling at how quickly he'd recovered. "Not a mark on you," she said, sounding almost disappointed. "Most peculiar." The end-of-year feast brought a final surprise when Dumbledore awarded last-minute points to Gryffindor for the trio's adventure, enough to win the House Cup from Slytherin. As Harry celebrated with his friends, he couldn't help reflecting on everything he'd learned about himself. He had his mother's protection against Voldemort, yes, but also this strange immunity that even Dumbledore didn't fully understand. Whatever it was, Harry was grateful for it, and determined to learn more. On the Hogwarts Express back to London, Ron and Hermione made him promise to write over the summer. "I'll need something to look forward to," Harry sighed, thinking of the Dursleys. "They don't even know I'm not allowed to use magic at home. I'm going to have a lot of fun with Dudley this summer." But as they approached King's Cross Station, Harry's thoughts turned to more serious matters. Voldemort was still out there, growing stronger. And now, more than ever, he would be seeking ways to counter Harry's unexpected protections. Whatever came next, Harry knew one thing for certain: his first year at Hogwarts had been just the beginning. Chapter 2, The Chambers Challenge. Summer at Privet Drive sucked worse than usual. The Dursleys were terrified of Harry after the whole Hagrid giving Dudley a pigtail incident, but instead of making things better, they'd just gotten more creative with their cruelty. Uncle Vernon installed a cat flap on Harry's bedroom door for passing food through. Aunt Petunia assigned impossible yard work quotas during the hottest part of day. And they locked all his school stuff, wand, books, broom, everything, in the cupboard under the stairs. The one upside. Harry had plenty of time to experiment with his immunity. One sweltering afternoon, Harry sat cross-legged on his bed, examining a small collection of test materials he'd smuggled upstairs. A rusty nail from the garden shed. A bottle of Aunt Petunia's strongest cleaning solution. Some questionable berries from the hedge that even birds avoided. "All right," Harry muttered to himself, "let's see what you can handle." He started with the nail, pressing the point against his palm until it bent. No mark appeared on his skin, not even a dent. Next came a few drops of the cleaning solution, the same stuff that had made Aunt Petunia wear thick rubber gloves and open all the windows. The liquid tingled slightly against his skin before evaporating, leaving no rash, no burn, nothing. The berries were the most interesting test. Harry popped one in his mouth, chewed thoughtfully, then swallowed. The taste was revolting, bitter and somehow both sour and rotten simultaneously, but he felt no ill effects whatsoever. "Fascinating," Harry whispered, unconsciously mimicking Professor Flitwick's favorite expression. A soft hoot drew his attention to Hedwig, locked in her cage. The snowy owl watched him with what seemed like disapproval. I know. Probably shouldn't be eating strange berries," Harry told her. "But I've got to understand how this works, Hedwig. Dumbledore wouldn't give me straight answers, but my immunity might be the only advantage I have against Voldemort." Hedwig clicked her beak in response. Harry flopped back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. "I just wish I knew where it came from. Mum's protection stops Voldemort from touching me, but this is different. Why can't potions affect me? Why couldn't the devil's snare grab me properly? Why?" A loud crack interrupted his musings. Harry bolted upright to find a bizarre creature standing on his bed, about 3 feet tall with bat-like ears, bulging green eyes, and wearing what looked like a filthy pillowcase. "Harry Potter," the creature squeaked, bowing so low its long nose touched the bedspread. "So long has Dobby wanted to meet you, sir. Such an honor it is." Thanks," Harry stammered, pressing himself against the headboard. "Who are you?" "Dobby, sir. Just Dobby. Dobby the house elf." "Right. Not to be rude or anything, but this isn't a great time for me to have a house elf in my bedroom." Dobby hung his head. "Dobby understands, but Dobby had to come. Dobby must protect Harry Potter, to warn him. Harry Potter must not go back to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry this year." Harry stared. "What?" "But I've got to go back, term starts September 1st. It's all that's keeping me going. You don't understand what it's like here. I belong in your world, at Hogwarts." No, Dobby squeaked, shaking his head so hard his ears flapped. "Harry Potter must stay where he is safe. He is too important, too good, to lose. If Harry Potter goes back to Hogwarts, he will be in mortal danger." "Why?" Harry asked. "There is a plot, Harry Potter. A plot to make most terrible things happen at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry this year," Dobby whispered, trembling. "Dobby has known it for months, sir. Harry Potter must not put himself in peril. He is too important." "What terrible things? Who's plotting them?" Dobby made a strange choking noise, then grabbed Harry's lamp and began beating himself over the head with it. "Stop!" Harry hissed, wrestling the lamp away. Downstairs, Uncle Vernon's voice boomed, "Dudley must have left his television on again, the little tyke." Footsteps thundered up the stairs. Quick as a flash, Dobby disappeared into Harry's wardrobe just as Uncle Vernon burst in. "What the devil are you doing?" Vernon demanded, face purple with rage. I was just one more sound and you'll wish you'd never been born, boy. Vernon slammed the door on his way out. Harry waited until the footsteps retreated before opening the wardrobe. See what it's like here. I've got to get back to Hogwarts. It's the only place I've got, friends. Friends who don't even write to Harry Potter. Dobby asked slyly. I expect they've been. Hang on, how do you know my friends haven't been writing to me? Dobby shuffled his feet. Harry Potter mustn't be angry with Dobby. Dobby did it for the best. Have you been stopping my letters? Dobby reluctantly pulled a thick wad of envelopes from inside his pillowcase, letters from Ron, Hermione, and even Hagrid. Harry Potter mustn't be angry. Dobby hoped if Harry Potter thought his friends had forgotten him. Harry Potter might not want to go back to school, sir. Give me my friend's letters. Harry lunged forward, but Dobby danced out of reach, then bolted for the bedroom door. Harry chased the house elf down the stairs and into the kitchen, where Aunt Petunia was putting the finishing touches on a massive pudding topped with whipped cream and sugared violets, dessert for Uncle Vernon's important dinner party with the Masons. Dobby snapped his fingers, and the pudding rose into the air. No, Harry gasped. Please, they'll kill me. Harry Potter must say he's not going back to school, I can't. Dobby gave him a tragic look. Then Dobby must do it, sir, for Harry Potter's own good. The pudding crashed down on the floor, splattering dessert across the kitchen. With a crack, Dobby vanished, leaving Harry alone with the mess, and the Dursleys' fury. Minutes later, an owl swooped through the dining room window, dropping a letter in front of Mrs. Mason, who screamed and fled the house, followed quickly by Mr. Mason. The letter, an official warning from the Ministry of Magic for underage magic, was the final straw. Vernon installed bars on Harry's window the following morning, vowing he'd never return to Hogwarts. But 3 nights later, Harry woke to the sound of an engine outside his window. Ron Weasley, along with his twin brothers Fred and George, had come to rescue him in a flying Ford Anglia. Hurry up! George urged as they pulled the bars off Harry's window. Get your trunk. It's locked in the cupboard under the stairs, Harry explained, and I can't get out of this room. No problem, Fred grinned, pulling out a hairpin. Lots of wizards think it's a waste of time learning these muggle tricks, but we feel their skills worth knowing. Within minutes, they'd packed Harry's trunk, freed Hedwig, and were lifting off into the night sky, just as Uncle Vernon burst into the bedroom, grabbing for Harry's ankle and missing by inches. See you next summer. Harry couldn't resist calling as the car gained altitude. As they flew toward the Weasleys' home, Harry filled Ron in on Dobby's warning and the stopped letters. Very fishy, Ron agreed, steering around a cloud. Definitely dodgy. House elves have powerful magic of their own, but they can't usually use it without their master's permission. I reckon someone sent Dobby to stop you from coming back to Hogwarts. But why? Ron shrugged. Maybe someone heard about your weird immunity thing and wants to check it out themselves. Harry hadn't considered that angle. You think people outside school know about that? Mate, you survived potions that should have given you boils, fell off your broom without a scratch, and walked through the devil's snare like it wasn't even trying. People talk. A chill ran down Harry's spine. Dumbledore's warning about keeping his ability quiet had apparently come too late. The burrow was everything Privet Drive wasn't: warm, chaotic, and magical. Mrs. Weasley scolded the boys fiercely for taking the car but welcomed Harry with open arms. Mr. Weasley, who worked at the Ministry of Magic in the Misuse of Muggle Artifacts office, was more interested in whether the car had flown well. Harry spent the happiest weeks of his life there, playing Quidditch in the paddock behind the house, deganoming the garden, and enjoying Mrs. Weasley's excellent cooking. The entire Weasley family treated him like one of their own, except for Ginny, Ron's younger sister, who seemed too nervous to speak in Harry's presence. When their Hogwarts letters arrived, Harry discovered they'd need a lot of books by someone named Gilderoy Lockhart. That lot won't come cheap, Fred observed, glancing at his parents. Lockhart's books are expensive. We'll manage, Mrs. Weasley said, but she looked worried. They traveled to Diagon Alley via powder, Harry's first experience with the magical transportation method. Unfortunately, he ended up in Nocturne Alley, a sketchy area devoted to the dark arts, before Hagrid found him and escorted him back to the main thoroughfare. At Flourish and Blots, they discovered why so many Lockhart books were required. The man himself was doing a book signing. Gilderoy Lockhart, with his wavy blonde hair, forget-me-not blue eyes, and dazzling smile, was surrounded by middle-aged witches, including Mrs. Weasley. When Lockhart spotted Harry, his eyes widened dramatically. It can't be Harry Potter. The crowd parted as Lockhart dived forward, seized Harry's arm, and pulled him to the front. Harry felt an immediate unease, not from pain, as Lockhart's grip couldn't hurt him, but from the calculated gleam in the man's eyes. "Nice big smile, Harry," Lockhart said through his own gleaming teeth. "Together, you and I are worth the front page." As the photographer's camera flashed, Lockhart kept a tight arm around Harry's shoulders. "Ladies and gentlemen, what an extraordinary moment this is. When young Harry stepped into Flourish and Blots today, he only wanted to buy my autobiography, which I shall be happy to present him now, free of charge." The crowd applauded. "He had no idea that he would shortly be getting much, much more than my book, Magical Me. He and his schoolmates will, in fact, be getting the real Magical Me." Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I have great pleasure and pride in announcing that this September, I will be taking up the post of defense against the dark arts teacher at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. As the crowd cheered, Lockhart presented Harry with the entire set of his books. Harry, staggering slightly under their weight, made his way to Ginny Weasley, who was standing to the side with a new cauldron. "You have these," Harry told her, tipping the books into the cauldron. "I'll buy my own. Bet you loved that, didn't you, Potter?" a familiar voice drawled. Draco Malfoy stood sneering at him. Famous Harry Potter can't even go into a bookshop without making the front page. Leave him alone, he didn't want all that. Ginny snapped, surprising everyone by speaking for the first time in Harry's presence. "Potter, you've got yourself a girlfriend," Malfoy teased. Before Harry could respond, Ron and Hermione pushed through the crowd, both clutching stacks of Lockhart's books. "Oh, it's you," Ron said, glaring at Malfoy. "Bet you're surprised to see Harry here, eh?" "Not as surprised as I am to see you in a shop, Weasley," retorted Malfoy. "I suppose your parents will go hungry for a month to pay for all those." Ron dropped his books and lunged at Malfoy, but Harry grabbed him, his immunity-enhanced grip surprisingly strong. "Ron, no," Hermione hissed. "It's not worth it." Well, Arthur Weasley." A taller, older version of Draco approached, Lucius Malfoy, with the same pointed face and cold grey eyes. "Lucius," Mr. Weasley nodded coldly. "Busy time at the Ministry, I hear. All those raids. I hope they're paying you overtime." He reached into Ginny's cauldron and extracted a very old, very battered copy of A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration. "Obviously not," Lucius said. "Dear me, what's the use of being a disgrace to the name of wizard if they don't even pay you well for it?" Mr. Weasley flushed. "We have a very different idea of what disgraces the name of wizard, Malfoy." Clearly, Lucius's eyes strayed to Hermione's parents, who were watching nervously. "The company you keep, Weasley, and I thought your family could sink no lower." There was a thud of metal as Ginny's cauldron went flying. Mr. Weasley had thrown himself at Mr. Malfoy, knocking him backward into a bookshelf. Dozens of heavy spellbooks came thundering down on their heads. Fred and George cheered as Mrs. Weasley shrieked, "No, Arthur, no." The crowd stampeded backward, knocking more shelves over, until Hagrid waded through the sea of books to pull Mr. Weasley and Mr. Malfoy apart. Lucius straightened his robes, still holding Ginny's old Transfiguration book. He thrust it at her, eyes glittering with malice. "Here, girl, take your book, it's the best your father can give you." Pulling himself from Hagrid's grip, he beckoned to Draco and swept from the shop. But as they departed, Harry noticed something odd. Lucius had been staring at him with intense fascination throughout the entire confrontation, as though Harry were a particularly interesting specimen in a laboratory. September 1st arrived with typical Weasley chaos: forgotten socks, misplaced books, and last-minute sandwiches from Mrs. Weasley. They piled into the Ford Anglia, magically expanded to fit everyone, and headed for King's Cross Station, only to have to turn back twice, once for Ginny's diary and once for Fred's broomstick. By the time they reached the station, it was nearly 11 o'clock. They rushed through the barrier to platform 9 3/4 in pairs, first Mr. Weasley with Ginny, then Percy, then Fred and George. "Let's go together, we've only got a minute," Ron said to Harry. They charged toward the barrier, pushing their trolleys, and crashed spectacularly against solid brick. Hedwig's cage bounced off Harry's trunk and rolled away, the owl shrieking indignantly as passers-by stared. "Why can't we get through?" Harry hissed, rubbing his shoulder. Despite his immunity, the impact had still knocked him off his feet. "I dunno," Ron looked wildly at the clock. "It's gone. The train's left." They were stranded on the wrong side of the barrier, with no way to contact the wizarding world. After waiting vainly for Ron's parents to return, they made a fateful decision: to fly the Ford Anglia to Hogwarts. The journey started well enough. They soared above London, then set course northward, keeping the railway line in sight. But as afternoon faded into evening, the car's magic began to fail. The engine whined, wings trembled, and steam leaked from under the hood. "We're nearly there," Ron encouraged the car, patting the dashboard like it was a nervous horse. "Come on, old girl." They flew over the lake toward Hogwarts Castle, its windows glowing warmly against the darkening sky, and then the engine died completely. "Mind that tree!" Harry shouted as they plummeted toward the ground. With an ear-splitting bang, they hit the thick tree trunk and dropped to the ground with a heavy jolt. Steam billowed from the crumpled hood, Hedwig was shrieking in terror, a golf ball-sized lump was forming on Ron's head from impact with the windshield, and Harry felt fine. Completely unharmed, despite not wearing a seatbelt. "Are you okay?" Harry asked Ron, who was moaning softly. "My wand," Ron said weakly, holding up his broken wand, nearly snapped in two with just a few splinters connecting the pieces. "Look at my wand." "Be thankful we're alive," Harry began, but was cut off as something hit the car with tremendous force, nearly tipping it over. "What's happened, ARGH?" A branch as thick as a battering ram had punched through Ron's window. The tree they'd hit was attacking them. Its branches pounded the car from every angle as they screamed and ducked. "Reverse! Reverse!" Harry yelled. The car shot backward as the tree tried to throttle them with its limbs. Safe beyond the reach of the flailing branches, the doors suddenly flew open and the seats tipped sideways, ejecting Harry, Ron, Hedwig, and their luggage onto the damp ground. With a final insulted chug, the car drove itself into the forbidden forest and disappeared. "Dad's going to kill me," Ron moaned, watching it vanish. They dragged their trunks up to the castle and peered through the windows of the Great Hall, where the sorting ceremony was already in progress. Ginny Weasley, looking even smaller than usual in her new black Hogwarts robes, was walking toward the sorting hat. "Hang on," Harry whispered, pulling Ron away from the window. "They'll see us. Let's go to the dungeons, Snape's office." But Snape found them first, materializing from the shadows with a vindictive smile that sent chills down their spines. "Well, well, well," he whispered, "the train isn't good enough for the famous Harry Potter and his faithful sidekick Weasley. Wanted to arrive with a bang, did we, boys?" Before they could explain, Snape marched them to his office, where he gleefully informed them about the muggles who'd spotted the flying car and the damage to the Womping Willow, a very valuable magical plant. When he threatened expulsion, Harry's heart sank. He couldn't go back to the Dursleys, he just couldn't. Fortunately, their fate lay with Professor McGonagall and Headmaster Dumbledore, who arrived minutes later. After a thorough questioning, they received detention rather than expulsion, though Harry couldn't help noticing Dumbledore's penetrating gaze lingering on him longer than usual. "You'd better get along to the hospital wing, Weasley," McGonagall said. "You're bleeding." "Not much," Ron touched the cut on his forehead. "Professor, I wanted to watch my sister being sorted. The sorting ceremony is over." "Your sister is also in Gryffindor." "Oh, good," Ron relaxed. "And speaking of Gryffindor," McGonagall gave them a piercing look, then assigned a heavy point deduction to their house. Finally dismissed, they headed for the Gryffindor common room. "That was a close one," Ron muttered. "Too close," Harry agreed. "Did you notice how Dumbledore looked at me? Like he was trying to figure something out. Maybe he's wondering why you weren't hurt in the crash." "I mean, I got this," Ron pointed to his cut, "and you don't have a scratch." Harry hadn't considered that. Was his immunity becoming more obvious? And if Dumbledore noticed, who else was watching? Within days, Harry realized his unique abilities had indeed become common knowledge. Students from all houses watched him during meals, whispering behind their hands. A group of Ravenclaws asked if he'd demonstrate his invincibility. Several Slytherins, led by Malfoy, tried jinxing him in the corridors, only to look disappointed when their spells fizzled against his skin. Professor Lockhart, their new defense teacher, seemed most interested of all. After a disastrous first lesson involving freshly caught Cornish pixies, Lockhart kept Harry after class. "Harry, Harry, Harry," he said, flashing his blindingly white teeth. "I've been hearing the most fascinating rumors about you, my boy. Extraordinary defensive capabilities, they say. Quite remarkable." "I don't know what you mean, Professor," Harry said cautiously. "No need to be modest with me, Harry." Lockhart placed a heavy arm around his shoulders. "I understand completely. When you're blessed with special talents, there's a temptation to hide them. I felt the same way when I first realized I could memory charm a Yeti at 50 paces. But we can't hide our light under a bushel, can we? I really should get to herbology, of course, of course. But I was thinking, perhaps you'd like some private coaching. I could help you understand those defensive abilities of yours. With my expertise and your natural talent, why, we could write a book together. Magical Me and the Boy Who Lived has a nice ring to it, doesn't it?" Harry extracted himself as politely as possible, but Lockhart's interest only grew more persistent. He took to accidentally casting minor jinxes in Harry's direction during demonstrations, watching intently as they dissipated harmlessly against Harry's robes. He assigned Harry to roleplay various victims in reenactments of his adventures, the werewolf, the vampire, the banshee, always with a spell that should have caused some effect but never did. "Fascinating resistance," Lockhart would murmur each time, scribbling notes when he thought Harry wasn't looking. The one bright spot in Harry's increasingly uncomfortable school life was Quidditch. Oliver Wood, the Gryffindor team captain, was determined to win the Quidditch Cup this year and scheduled practice sessions at dawn 3 times a week. During one such early morning session, they found themselves ambushed by the Slytherin team, who had a written note from Snape giving them permission to use the field to train their new seeker, Draco Malfoy. "Aren't you Lucius Malfoy's son?" Fred asked, eyeing the 7 brand new Nimbus 2001 broomsticks the Slytherins carried. "Funny you should mention Draco's father," Marcus Flint, the Slytherin captain, smirked. "He's made a generous gift to the Slytherin team. Nimbus 2001's for everyone. Outstrips the old 2000 series by a considerable amount. As for the old clean sweeps," he smiled nastily at Fred and George's ancient brooms, "sweeps the board with them." Ron and Hermione approached across the field to see what was happening. "At least no one on the Gryffindor team had to buy their way in," Hermione said sharply. "They got in on pure talent." Malfoy's smug expression twisted. "No one asked your opinion, you filthy little mudblood." The field erupted in chaos. Flint had to dive in front of Malfoy to stop Fred and George from jumping on him. Alicia shrieked, "How dare you!" And Ron pulled out his damaged wand, yelling, "You'll pay for that, Malfoy." He pointed it at Malfoy's face and shouted, "Eat slugs." A bang echoed around the stadium and a jet of green light shot out of the wrong end of Ron's wand, hitting him in the stomach and sending him backward onto the grass. "Ron!" Hermione screamed, rushing to his side. "Are you all right?" Ron opened his mouth to speak, but instead of words, he belched, and several slugs dribbled down his chin. The Slytherins roared with laughter. Flint was doubled over, hanging onto his new broomstick for support. Malfoy was on all fours, banging the ground with his fist. Harry and Hermione helped Ron up and began leading him toward Hagrid's cabin, the nearest friendly location. "What happened?" Hagrid asked as they burst through his door, Ron still belching slugs. Malfoy called Hermione something, Harry explained, helping Ron into a chair. "It must have been really bad, because everyone went wild." "It was bad," Ron said hoarsely, emerging from behind a large copper basin Hagrid had placed in front of him. More slugs dribbled down his chin. Malfoy called her mud-blood, Hagrid. Hagrid looked outraged. "He didn't." "He did," Hermione said quietly. "But I don't know what it means." "I could tell it was really rude, of course, it's about the most insulting thing he could think of," Ron gasped, before another slug attack. "Mudblood's a foul name for someone who's muggle-born. Some wizards, like Malfoy's family, think they're better than everyone else because they're pure blood." He disappeared behind the basin again. Harry patted his back awkwardly. "That's horrible," Harry said. "But Ron, why'd you try to hex him with a broken wand?" "You know those spells bounce off me, I could have just stood there and let him fire away until he got tired." Hermione looked at him sharply. "That's not the point, Harry. You shouldn't have to be a human shield. Malfoy shouldn't be saying such terrible things at all." "I know, I just meant, and it wouldn't have helped anyway," Hagrid interjected. "People are talking about Harry. All kinds rumors flyin' around, that nothing can hurt that spells don't work on The wrong sort might take that as a challenge, if you know what I mean." Harry's stomach clenched. He hadn't considered that his immunity might provoke people rather than deter them. "What kind of challenge?" he asked quietly. Hagrid and Hermione exchanged worried glances. "Some might try to find what does affect Hagrid said carefully. "Others might decide if they can't hurt directly, they'll go after people care about instead." Ron belched another slug. "Wonderful," he croaked. "So now we're targets because we're Harry's friends?" "You already were," Hermione pointed out. "Remember the chessboard? The obstacles to the stone were designed to use Harry's friends as a weakness." Harry suddenly felt cold. "Dobby," he whispered. "That's what he meant, the danger at Hogwarts this year. It's not just aimed at the school. It's aimed at me, specifically." October arrived with driving rain and a nasty cold that swept through the school. Madame Pomfrey's pepper-up potion cured most students, though it left them smoking at the ears for hours afterward. Harry, unsurprisingly, didn't catch the cold at all. Nearly headless Nick, the Gryffindor ghost, invited Harry to his 500th death day party on Halloween. Out of politeness, and to avoid Lockhart, Harry agreed to attend, dragging Ron and Hermione along. The celebration was exactly as gloomy as expected, held in a dungeon, attended by hundreds of translucent ghosts, featuring rotten food for ambience, and entertainment from a musical saw orchestra. They escaped as soon as politely possible, heading back toward the Great Hall in hopes of catching the end of the feast. But as they climbed the steps into the entrance hall, Harry suddenly stopped. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. Ron and Hermione froze, listening. "Hear what?" Ron asked. "That voice, it's saying. Rip, tear, kill." Harry turned toward the sound. "It's moving, this way." He sprinted up the marble staircase to the first floor, Ron and Hermione clattering behind him. "Harry, what are we, SH? It's going to kill someone." He ran faster, following the voice only he could hear, until they turned a corner into the last, deserted passage. "Harry, what was that all about?" Ron asked, wiping sweat from his face. I couldn't hear anything. But Hermione suddenly gasped, pointing down the corridor. Look! Something was shining on the wall ahead. They approached slowly, squinting through the darkness. Foot-high words had been daubed on the wall between two windows, gleaming in the light cast by flaming torches. The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air, beware. What's that thing, hanging underneath? Ron asked, a slight quiver in his voice. As they edged nearer, Harry nearly slipped in a large puddle of water on the floor. They realized the shadow beneath the message was Mrs. Norris, the caretaker's cat, hanging stiff as a board from a torch bracket. For a few seconds, they stood transfixed. Then Ron said, let's get out of here. Shouldn't we try to help? Harry began. Trust me, Ron cut him off. We don't want to be found here. But it was too late. A rumble, like distant thunder, told them the feast had ended. From either end of the corridor came the sound of hundreds of feet climbing the stairs, and loud, happy voices of well-fed students. The next moment, students were flooding into the corridor from both sides, cheerful talk dying suddenly as they spotted the hanging cat. Harry, Ron, and Hermione stood alone in the middle of the corridor as silence fell among the mass of students. Then someone shouted through the quiet, enemies of the air, beware. You'll be next, mudbloods. It was Draco Malfoy, who had pushed to the front of the crowd, his cold eyes alive with malice. What's going on here? Make way, make way. Argus Filch, the caretaker, came shouldering through the crowd, only to see Mrs. Norris and fall back in horror. My cat! My cat! What's happened to Mrs. Norris? He shrieked, then his eyes fell on Harry. You've murdered my cat. You've killed her. I'll kill you. Argus. Dumbledore had arrived on the scene, followed by a number of other teachers. In moments, he had detached Mrs. Norris from the torch bracket and instructed Filch, Harry, Ron, and Hermione to follow him. Lockhart eagerly offered his office for the examination of the cat. As they entered Lockhart's office, walls covered with pictures of Lockhart himself, all winking and flashing dazzling smiles, Dumbledore began examining Mrs. Norris carefully. She's not dead, Argus, he said softly. She has been petrified. But how, I cannot say. Ask him. Filch shrieked, turning his blotched face to Harry. No second year could have done this, Dumbledore said firmly. It would take dark magic of the most advanced. He did it. Filch spat, his face purpling. You saw what he wrote on the wall. He knows I'm a, Filch's face worked horribly. He knows I'm a squib. I never touched Mrs. Norris. Harry defended himself. I don't even know what a squib is. Rubbish. Filch snarled. He saw my quickspell letter. Snape stepped forward now, his black eyes glittering with something that looked almost like concern. If I might speak, Headmaster, he said. Potter and his friends may have simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time. But we do have a set of suspicious circumstances here. Why were they in the upstairs corridor at all? Why not at the Halloween feast? Harry, Ron, and Hermione launched into an explanation about the Death Day party, but Snape's thin smile didn't waver. But why not join the feast afterward? Why go up to that corridor? Because Harry hesitated. How could he explain following a voice no one else could hear? Because we were tired and wanted to go to bed, Hermione said quickly. Without any supper. Snape's smile grew wider. I didn't think ghosts provided food fit for living people at their parties. We weren't hungry, Ron said loudly, as his stomach gave a huge rumble. Snape's eyes gleamed. I suggest, Headmaster, that Potter is not being entirely truthful. Perhaps he should be deprived of certain privileges until he is ready to tell us the whole story. The upcoming Quidditch match, for instance, really, Severus, Professor McGonagall interrupted sharply. I see no reason to stop the boy playing Quidditch. This cat wasn't hit over the head with a broomstick. Dumbledore gave Harry a searching look. Innocent until proven guilty, Severus. Filch looked furious. My cat has been petrified. I want to see some punishment. We will be able to cure her, Argus, Dumbledore said patiently. Professor Sprout recently managed to procure some mandrakes. As soon as they have reached their full size, I will have a potion made that will revive Mrs. Norris. I'll make it, Lockhart butted in. I must have done it 100 times. I could whip up a mandrake restorative draught in my sleep, excuse me, Snape said icily, but I believe I am the potions master at this school. An awkward silence followed. Then Dumbledore dismissed them, though Harry noticed the headmaster's eyes follow him all the way to the door, thoughtful, concerned, and somehow calculating. For days, the school talked of nothing but the attack on Mrs. Norris. Filch kept it fresh in everyone's minds by pacing the spot where she had been attacked, as though he might catch the culprit returning to the scene of the crime. Ginny Weasley seemed especially disturbed by Mrs. Norris's fate. According to Ron, she was a great cat lover. But you hadn't really gotten to know Mrs. Norris, Ron told her bracingly. Honestly, we're much better off without her. Ginny's lip trembled. Things like this weren't supposed to happen at Hogwarts. What if it's... Her voice trailed off, her eyes darting nervously. What if it's what? Harry prompted. Nothing, she whispered, clutching a small black diary to her chest. I need to go. Harry watched her hurry away, concerned. Ginny had been acting strangely since the attack, pale and withdrawn, with dark circles under her eyes. She's just shocked about Mrs. Norris, Ron dismissed when Harry mentioned it. First year's always stressful, and she's always been a bit high-strung. But Harry couldn't shake the feeling something more was wrong. Meanwhile, Hermione had become obsessed with researching the Chamber of Secrets. She finally convinced Professor Binns, the ghost who taught history of magic, to tell them the story during class. According to legend, Salazar Slytherin had built a hidden chamber in the castle before leaving the school. The chamber contained a monster that only the heir of Slytherin could control, which would purge the school of all who were unworthy to study magic, Muggleborns. But that's just a myth, Binns insisted. The school has been searched many times. No such chamber exists. Sir, Hermione raised her hand again. What exactly do you mean by the horror within the chamber? It is believed to be some sort of monster, which the heir of Slytherin alone can control, Binns replied irritably. But I tell you, the thing does not exist. However, the rest of the school wasn't so sure. Students now traveled in tight-knit groups, as though afraid they might be attacked if they ventured alone. The first years moved around the castle in tight-knit packs, looking nervous and tense. In the midst of all this, Harry found himself under increasing scrutiny. Some students whispered he might be the heir of Slytherin. Others speculated his immunity might be tied to the chamber's magic. Ernie Macmillan, a Hufflepuff, even suggested Harry had survived the killing curse because he was a powerful dark wizard himself. That's why nothing can hurt him, Harry overheard Ernie telling a group in the library. Dark magic protection. And now he's revealed his true nature. The rumors hurt more than Harry expected. After years of being an outcast with the Dursleys, he'd finally found acceptance at Hogwarts, and now that, too, was slipping away. Only the Gryffindor Quidditch team stood firmly by him, particularly during their upcoming match against Slytherin, where they'd faced the Slytherin's new Nimbus 2001 broomsticks. But the match proved disastrous in ways no one anticipated. From the moment Madame Hooch's whistle blew, Harry knew something was wrong. A heavy black bludger was following him with single-minded determination, ignoring all other players. Someone's tampered with this bludger. Fred shouted, swinging his bat with all his might at it as it launched a new attack on Harry. Even with Fred and George flying so close they could only see Harry between them, the rogue bludger managed to smash into Harry's elbow. He felt a searing pain, actual pain, and nearly fell off his broom in shock. It hurt. The bludger had broken his arm, and it hurt. Harry, behind you! Wood yelled. Harry turned and saw the bludger pelting toward him again. He swerved, one arm dangling uselessly at his side. The bludger grazed his side, knocking the breath out of him but, strangely, causing no additional damage beyond the initial broken arm. Through rain and pain, Harry spotted the golden snitch hovering near Malfoy's left ear. Gritting his teeth, he dived, right arm hanging limply, left hand desperately reaching. Harry Potter has caught the snitch. Gryffindor wins. Lee Jordan's voice boomed across the stadium. Harry hit the mud with a splash, rolled off his broom, and lay there, clutching his broken arm. He'd done it, they'd won, and the pain in his arm was both excruciating and exhilarating. For once, he was experiencing something normally. But his relief was short-lived as Gilderoy Lockhart pushed through the crowd, beaming. Not to worry, Harry. I'll fix that arm of yours straight away. No. Harry protested. I'll go to the hospital wing, he really should, Professor, Wood agreed, unable to suppress his grin. Great capture, Harry, really spectacular, your best yet, I'd say, stand back, Lockhart rolled up his jade-green sleeves. No, don't, Harry said weakly, but Lockhart was twirling his wand, and a second later, Harry felt a strange, unpleasant sensation in his injured arm. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. Harry's arm no longer hurt, but neither did it feel remotely like an arm. He looked down and nearly passed out. His arm wasn't broken anymore, it wasn't even an arm. Lockhart hadn't mended Harry's bones, he'd removed them completely. His arm now resembled a thick flesh-colored rubber glove. Ah, Lockhart said nervously. Yes. Well, that can sometimes happen. The point is, the bones are no longer broken. That's the thing to remember. Broken? Hagrid growled, helping Harry to his feet. There's no bones left. In the hospital wing, Madame Pomfrey was beside herself. You should have come straight to me, she scolded, holding up Harry's limp, rubbery arm. I can mend bones in a second, but growing them back, you will be able to, won't you? Harry asked desperately. I'll be able to, certainly, but it will be painful, she said grimly, throwing Harry a pair of pajamas. You'll have to stay the night. As Ron helped Harry into his pajamas, their discussion turned to the rogue bludger. Someone definitely tampered with it, Ron said. The question is, who? I think we know who, Harry said darkly. Malfoy. I don't think so, Hermione countered, arriving with a basin of water. It takes powerful dark magic to tamper with Quidditch equipment. Malfoy's nasty, but I don't think he's that advanced. The important thing, Harry said, wincing as Madame Pomfrey forced him to drink a steaming potion labeled Skillgrow, is that it actually hurt me. The bludger broke my arm, and I felt it. That's never happened before. Ron and Hermione exchanged worried looks. You think your immunity is wearing off? Ron asked. No, that's not it, Harry replied thoughtfully. Because after the initial break, the second hit barely hurt. It's like my immunity kicks in after the first injury. That actually matches what I've read about Bezoars, Hermione said excitedly. They work as an antidote once ingested, but they need initial exposure to the poison to create immunity. Maybe your protection works similarly. Great, Harry grimaced as the Skillgrow burned his throat. So I get hurt once, then I'm fine after that. Not exactly foolproof. That night, as Harry lay awake with the pain of regrowing 33 bones, he received an unexpected visitor. With a crack, Dobby the house elf appeared at the foot of his bed. Harry Potter came back to school, he whispered miserably. Dobby warned and warned Harry Potter. Why didn't he heed Dobby? Harry pushed himself up with his good arm. What are you doing here? And was it you, did you make that bludger try to kill me? Not kill you, sir, never kill you. Dobby looked shocked. Dobby wants to save Harry Potter's life. Better sent home, grievously injured, than remain here, sir. Oh, is that all?" Harry said sarcastically. "I don't suppose you're going to tell me why you wanted me sent home in pieces." If Harry Potter only knew. Dobby grabbed the water jug from Harry's bedside and cracked it against his own head. "If he knew what he means to us, to the lowly, the enslaved, we dregs of the magical world." "Who's we? Who are you working for, Dobby?" But Dobby only shook his head frantically. Then his bad ears perked up at a sound from the corridor. "Dobby must go," he whispered, vanishing with a crack. Next moment, Dumbledore backed into the dormitory, wearing a long woolly dressing gown and nightcap. He was carrying one end of what looked like a statue. Professor McGonagall appeared a second later, carrying the feet. Together, they placed the statue on a bed. "Get Madame Pomfrey," Dumbledore whispered, and McGonagall hurried past Harry's bed. Harry lay very still, pretending to be asleep. He heard urgent voices, then Madame Pomfrey's quick footsteps. "What happened?" she asked softly. "Another attack," Dumbledore replied. "Minerva found him on the stairs. There was a bunch of grapes next to him," Professor McGonagall said. "We think he was trying to sneak up here to visit Potter." Harry's stomach gave a horrible lurch. Slowly and carefully, he raised himself a few inches to look at the statue on the bed. A ray of moonlight fell across the petrified form of Colin Creevey, a first-year Gryffindor who had been constantly taking pictures of Harry with his camera. The camera was still raised in front of his face, but now it was melted and warped. "Petrified?" Madame Pomfrey whispered. "Yes," Professor McGonagall confirmed. "But I shudder to think. If Albus hadn't been on the way downstairs for hot chocolate, who knows what might have happened." Dumbledore leaned forward and wrenched the camera from Colin's rigid grip. "You don't think he managed to get a picture of his attacker?" With a small puff of smoke, the back of the camera popped open, revealing the film inside completely melted. "What does this mean, Albus?" Professor McGonagall asked urgently. "It means," Dumbledore replied, "that the Chamber of Secrets is indeed open again." "Again?" Madame Pomfrey asked. "You mean it's happened before?" "The question is not who," Dumbledore said, eyes fixed on Colin's frozen form. "The question is, how?" From his semi-darkened bed, Harry found his gaze drawn to the melted camera. Colin had been trying to visit him. Was this his fault too? Was the monster targeting people connected to him? News of Colin's petrification spread through the school like wildfire, creating an atmosphere of suspicion and fear. First years now moved around the castle in tight-knit groups, as though scared they might be attacked if they ventured alone. In the second week of December, Professor McGonagall collected names of students staying at Hogwarts for Christmas. Harry, Ron, and Hermione signed up. They'd heard Malfoy was staying too, which seemed suspicious. The opportunity to investigate Malfoy came in the form of Hermione's ingenious, if risky, plan, the Polyjuice Potion. It would transform them into Slytherins temporarily, allowing them to question Malfoy directly. They'd been brewing it in secret in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, and it was nearly ready. Their plan hit a snag, however, during the first meeting of Lockhart's new dueling club. After a disastrous demonstration with Snape that left Lockhart disarmed and embarrassed, the students paired off to practice. Harry was paired with Justin Finch-Fletchley, but Snape intervened. "Time to split up the dream team, I think," he sneered. "Weasley, you can partner Finnegan." "Potter," his black eyes glittered. "Let's see how you fare against Mr. Malfoy." Malfoy strutted over, smirking. As the boys faced each other, Lockhart counted down, 3, 2, 1, go. Malfoy raised his wand quickly and bellowed, Serpensortia. The end of his wand exploded, and a long black snake shot out, falling heavily onto the floor between them. It raised itself, hissing furiously. There were screams as students backed away. Harry stood perfectly still, watching the snake carefully. It didn't seem inclined to attack him, as if it sensed something unusual about him. "Don't move, Potter," Snape said lazily. "I'll get rid of it." "Allow me." Lockhart shouted. He brandished his wand at the snake and a loud bang echoed through the hall, but instead of vanishing, the snake flew 10 feet into the air and fell back to the floor with a loud smack. Enraged, it slithered straight toward Justin Finch-Fletchley and raised itself, fangs exposed, poised to strike. Without thinking, Harry moved toward the snake and shouted, "Leave him alone." To his astonishment, the snake slumped to the floor, docile as a garden hose. Harry looked up at Justin, expecting to see relief or gratitude, but Justin's face showed terror and anger. "What do you think you're playing at?" he shouted, and before Harry could reply, Justin turned and stormed out of the hall. Snape stepped forward, waved his wand, and the snake vanished in a puff of black smoke. He gave Harry a shrewd, calculating look that Harry couldn't quite decipher, not anger, exactly, but intense interest. Ron grabbed Harry's robes and steered him out of the hall, Hermione hurrying alongside them. Not until they had reached the empty Gryffindor common room did Ron speak. "You're a parselmouth," he said, looking pale. "Why didn't you tell us?" "I'm a what?" "A parselmouth." Ron repeated. "You can talk to snakes." "I know," Harry said. "I accidentally set a boa constrictor on my cousin Dudley at the zoo once." "But so what? I bet loads of people here can do it." "No, they can't," Ron said. "It's not a common gift, Harry. It's dark." "What's dark?" Harry asked, growing impatient. "If I hadn't told that snake not to attack Justin, is that what you said to it?" Ron asked. "You were there, you heard me." "I heard you speaking Parseltongue," Ron replied. "Snake language. You could have been saying anything." No wonder Justin panicked, it sounded like you were egging the snake on or something. Harry gaped at him. "I spoke a different language. But I didn't realize, how can I speak a language without knowing I can?" "I don't know," Ron said, "but it looks bad, Harry. Salazar Slytherin was famous for talking to snakes. That's why the symbol of Slytherin House is a serpent. Now everyone's going to think you're his great-great-great-grandson or something." "But I'm not," Harry protested, panic rising. "You'll find that hard to prove," Hermione said quietly. "He lived about 1,000 years ago, for all we know, you could be." By next morning, the news had spread throughout the school. Students pointed and whispered as Harry passed, some even changing direction to avoid him in corridors. Determined to explain himself to Justin, Harry searched the castle but found no sign of him, until he overheard a group of Hufflepuffs in the library discussing Harry's supposed dark abilities. "So anyway," a stout boy was saying, "I told Justin to hide in our dormitory. If Potter's marked him down as his next victim, it's best if he keeps a low profile for a while." "But why would he want to attack Justin?" a girl with blonde pigtails asked. "Justin let slip to Potter he was Muggle-born," the stout boy replied. "And you know Potter can't be harmed, nothing hurts him. That kind of power only comes from dark magic. He's probably been chosen to finish Slytherin's work." Harry couldn't bear to listen anymore. He left the library and wandered aimlessly, ending up near the Transfiguration department, which was deserted except for nearly headless Nick floating along, muttering to himself. "Hello, Nick," Harry greeted. "Hello, hello," nearly headless Nick replied absently, then seemed to notice Harry's dejected expression. "You look troubled, young Potter." "It's nothing," Harry started, then changed his mind. "Actually, Nick, everyone thinks I'm the heir of Slytherin now. They're scared of me." Nick floated closer. "Ah, yes, I've heard the whispers. Most unfair. But if I may offer a ghost's perspective, being feared isn't always the worst thing, particularly in dangerous times. Your unique resilience might keep some unsavory characters at a distance. But I don't want people afraid of me. I just want—" Harry stopped mid-sentence. A chorus of loud bangs echoed from the floor above, followed by a high-pitched mewling cry. "Peeves," Nick sighed. "Always causing trouble. I'd better see what he's up to." The ghost floated upward through the ceiling. Harry continued down the corridor, turning a corner, and tripped over something lying on the floor. He rolled over and froze in horror at what he saw. Justin Finch-Fletchley was lying on the floor, rigid and cold, with a look of shock frozen on his face. And floating next to him, black and smoky rather than pearly white, was nearly headless Nick, no longer moving, but suspended immobile and horizontal. Harry scrambled to his feet, breathing fast and shallow. He looked wildly up and down the deserted corridor, and saw a line of spiders scuttling away from the bodies, as though fleeing something terrifying. The sound of a door opening made Harry jump. Peeves the poltergeist came shooting out of a classroom, spotted Harry and Justin, and let out a gleeful cackle. Attack! Attack! Another attack! No mortal or ghost is safe. Run for your lives! Attack! Door after door flew open along the corridor, and a tide of students poured out. For several chaotic minutes, Justin was nearly trampled, and people kept stumbling through nearly headless Nick. Professor McGonagall finally arrived, setting off a loud bang from her wand to restore silence. Caught in the act. Ernie Macmillan yelled, his face stark white, pointing dramatically at Harry. He's even immune to whatever petrifies the victims. It must be him. That will do, Macmillan. Professor McGonagall said sharply. Peeves was bobbing overhead, grinning wickedly, surveying the scene. Peeves always loved chaos. As the teachers bent over Justin and nearly headless Nick, examining them, Peeves broke into song. Oh, Potter, you rotter, oh, what have you done? You're killing off students, you think it's good fun. That's enough, Peeves. Professor McGonagall barked, and Peeves zoomed away, sticking out his tongue at Harry. Justin was carried up to the hospital wing by Professor Flitwick and Professor Sinistra, but nobody seemed to know what to do with nearly headless Nick. Finally, Professor McGonagall conjured a large fan and handed it to Ernie, instructing him to waft Nick up the stairs. She then turned to Harry. This way, Potter, she said firmly. Professor, Harry said at once, I swear I didn't, this is out of my hands, Potter, Professor McGonagall said curtly. They marched in silence around a corner and stopped before a large and extremely ugly stone gargoyle. Lemon drop. Professor McGonagall said. The gargoyle sprang to life and leapt aside as the wall behind it split in two, revealing a spiral staircase that moved continuously upward like an escalator. They stepped onto it, the wall closed behind them, and they rose upward in circles until they reached a gleaming oak door with a brass knocker in the shape of a griffin. Harry knew now where he was being taken. This must be Dumbledore's office. The circular room was beautiful and fascinating, filled with delicate silver instruments emitting puffs of smoke, portraits of previous headmasters and headmistresses dozing in their frames, and an enormous claw-footed desk. Behind the desk stood a shelf holding a shabby, tattered wizard's hat, the Sorting Hat. Wondering if it might offer some insight, Harry approached the hat and placed it on his head. Be in your bonnet, Potter, a small voice said in his ear. Yes, Harry admitted. I was wondering if you put me in the right house. Yes, the hat said confidently. You possess many Slytherin qualities, that immunity of yours would have served you well there. But your choices are what truly define you, and you chose Gryffindor. And as I told you before, that protection you carry is most unusual, ancient magic. What kind of protection? Harry asked eagerly. Where does it come from? But before the hat could answer, a gagging noise behind him made Harry whirl around. He wasn't alone after all, a decrepit-looking bird stood on a golden perch behind the door. It looked very ill, its eyes were dull, and as Harry watched, a couple more feathers fell from its tail. Harry was just thinking that all he needed was for Dumbledore's pet bird to die while he was alone in the office, when the bird burst into flames. Harry yelled in shock, backing away quickly. The bird had become a fireball, it gave one loud shriek and was suddenly gone, leaving only a smoldering pile of ash on the floor. The office door opened and Dumbledore came in, looking somber. Professor! Harry gasped. Your bird, I couldn't do anything, it just caught fire." To Harry's astonishment, Dumbledore smiled. "About time, too. He's been looking dreadful for days, I've been telling him to get a move on." At Harry's bewildered look, Dumbledore explained, "Fawkes is a phoenix, Harry. They burst into flame when it's time for them to die, and are reborn from the ashes. Watch." Harry looked down in time to see a tiny, wrinkled newborn bird poke its head out of the ashes. "It's a shame you had to see him on a burning day." Dumbledore seated himself behind his desk. "He's really very handsome most of the time." Right," Harry said, still stunned by the transformation. "Professor, about what happened with Justin and nearly headless Nick, I do not think you attacked those people, Harry," Dumbledore said quietly. "You don't?" Relief swept through Harry. "Then who did?" "That is the question," Dumbledore sighed. "But I'm more interested in why you were visiting me in the first place." "I wanted to tell you that I'm not the heir of Slytherin." Harry blurted out. "Everyone thinks I am because I can speak Parseltongue, but, I know you are not the heir, Harry," Dumbledore said calmly. "I was at Hogwarts 50 years ago when the chamber was last opened. The culprit then was caught and expelled." "Then you know who's behind the attacks now?" Harry asked hopefully. "No, I do not," Dumbledore admitted. "History may be repeating itself, but in ways we don't yet understand." Harry hesitated, then decided to ask the question that had been bothering him. "Professor, the Sorting Hat told me I would have done well in Slytherin. It also mentioned something about ancient magic, about my immunity. Are they connected?" Dumbledore's piercing blue eyes studied Harry for a long moment. "The qualities Salazar Slytherin prized, resourcefulness, determination, a certain disregard for rules, are not inherently bad, Harry. And no, your immunity is not connected to Slytherin heritage, though it is indeed rare and ancient magic." "What is it, then?" Harry pressed. "Why can't I be hurt like normal people? Why don't potions or hexes affect me?" Dumbledore stroked his beard thoughtfully. "I have a theory, but it requires verification. You see, Harry, there are rare instances throughout magical history of individuals who developed extraordinary resistance to harmful magic. Most required rituals or potions to achieve this state, but in a few cases, it occurred naturally through unusual circumstances." "What circumstances?" Harry asked eagerly. "Sometimes through exposure to a magical substance at a crucial moment of development." Dumbledore leaned forward. "Did anything unusual happen to you as a child, before Voldemort's attack? Something you might have touched or ingested?" Harry thought hard, then slowly shook his head. "I don't remember anything before the Dursleys. And they certainly never gave me anything magical." "No, I suppose not." Dumbledore looked disappointed. "Well, regardless of its origin, your immunity is both a gift and, potentially, a target. There are those who would be very interested in understanding how you resist magic that affects others." "Like Lockhart," Harry muttered. "He's always trying to test me." A flicker of amusement crossed Dumbledore's face. "Professor Lockhart's interest, while perhaps annoying, is relatively harmless. I'm more concerned about darker forces. Voldemort, for instance, would find your immunity fascinating." Harry swallowed hard. "Is that why the monster is attacking people around me? To get to me?" "I believe the attacks and your immunity are unrelated coincidences," Dumbledore said. "But it's natural for frightened people to connect unusual phenomena. Your immunity makes you stand out, and in troubled times, people fear what they don't understand." It wasn't exactly the reassurance Harry had hoped for, but it was better than nothing. As he turned to leave, Dumbledore called after him. "Harry, remember, it's our choices that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities or immunities." The double attack on Justin and nearly headless Nick turned the trickle of nervous speculation into a flood of panic. Curiously, nearly headless Nick's fate seemed to worry people most. If a ghost could be attacked, what chance did flesh and blood have? Most students couldn't wait to go home for Christmas holidays. Harry, Ron, and Hermione, however, remained at Hogwarts along with Malfoy and his cronies, perfect for their polyjuice plan. On Christmas morning, Harry and Ron found Hermione in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, tending to the bubbling cauldron of polyjuice potion. "It's ready," she announced, ladling thick, mud-like liquid into 3 glasses. "We still need bits of the people we're changing into," she reminded them. "I've got these." She held up 2 cupcakes. "I've filled these with a simple sleeping draught. You just need to make sure Crabbe and Goyle find them. Once they're asleep, pull out a few of their hairs." "What about you?" Ron asked. "I've already got mine," Hermione said, holding up a tiny bottle. "Millicent Bulstrode's hair. She left it on my robes when she was trying to strangle me during the dueling club. Now, once we've drunk the potion, we'll have exactly 1 hour before we change back." Everything went according to plan, until they transformed. Harry and Ron successfully became Crabbe and Goyle, but Hermione refused to come out of her stall. "Go on without me," she insisted through the door. "You're wasting time." Harry and Ron had to leave her behind. They made their way to the Slytherin common room, password, Pure Blood, where they found Malfoy lounging like a prince among his subjects. "Where have you two been?" Malfoy demanded. "Pigging out in the Great Hall all this time." Harry and Ron, disguised as Crabbe and Goyle, grunted affirmatively and sat down. Harry's heart was racing, he'd never been this close to Malfoy without hostility between them. "Did you see the latest Daily Prophet?" Malfoy held up a clipping. "Another attack on Muggleborns. Father says the Ministry's doing spot checks all over the place now. About time, if you ask me." "Do you know who's behind the attacks?" Harry asked, trying to sound like Goyle. Malfoy gave him a suspicious look. "You know I don't, Goyle. How many times do I have to tell you? But Father did say the chamber was opened 50 years ago, and a mudblood died last time. It's only a matter of time before one of them's killed this time." "Do you know who opened it last time?" Ron asked. "Father won't tell me anything specific," Malfoy scowled. "Just says I need to keep my head down and let the air get on with it. But he did say something interesting about Potter." Malfoy leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Father thinks Potter's immunity might be connected to the chamber somehow, ancient Slytherin magic that activates in his true heir." Harry felt his blood run cold. "But Potter can't be the heir," he said quickly. "He's a half-blood himself." "That's what I said," Malfoy nodded, looking irritated. "And Father agrees it's unlikely. He thinks Potter's got some other kind of protection, maybe something his parents did before they were killed. Father's very interested in it, actually. Keeps asking if I've noticed any patterns to what affects Potter and what doesn't." "Why's your dad so interested?" Ron asked suspiciously. Malfoy shrugged. "Academic curiosity, I suppose. Though he did say if I could get a sample of Potter's blood, he'd make it worth my while." Harry and Ron exchanged alarmed glances. Before they could probe further, Harry noticed Goyle's appearance beginning to change, his skin bubbling like hot wax. The potion was wearing off. They made hasty excuses and rushed from the Slytherin common room, sprinting back to Moaning Myrtle's bathroom just as they transformed back into themselves. "Hermione, come out, we've got loads to tell you," Harry called. "Go away," Myrtle's delighted voice answered. The bathroom door opened, and Myrtle glided over to them, looking gleeful. "Ooh, wait till you see her. It's dreadful." Slowly, the lock slid back, and Hermione emerged, sobbing, her robes pulled up over her head. "What's wrong?" Ron asked uncertainly. "It was cat hair I plucked off Millicent's robes," Hermione wailed. "The potion isn't meant for animal transformations." She lowered her robes, revealing a face covered in fur, with yellow eyes and pointed ears. "Look at my face. And I've got a tail." It took a visit to the hospital wing to sort Hermione out. Madame Pomfrey didn't ask questions, she'd apparently seen stranger magical accidents, but Hermione remained in the hospital wing for several weeks. While visiting her, Harry and Ron filled her in on Malfoy's revelations. "So Lucius Malfoy wants a sample of your blood?" Hermione said, horrified. "That can't be good, Harry. Blood is incredibly powerful in certain dark magic rituals." "At least we know Malfoy isn't the heir," Ron pointed out. "His father wouldn't need to ask him for information if they were behind it." "And now everyone thinks I'm the heir because of my immunity," Harry added glumly. "Even Lucius Malfoy thinks it might be Slytherin magic." Hermione frowned thoughtfully. "I've been doing more reading about magical immunities. They're incredibly rare, but there are a few historical cases. Most involved exposure to powerful magical substances, sometimes accidentally." "Like what?" Harry asked. "Well, there was a wizard in the 1600s who fell into a cauldron of strengthening solution as a child and developed resistance to physical damage. And in the Middle Ages, a witch supposedly drank unicorn blood willingly given and became immune to most poisons." "I think I'd remember falling into a magical cauldron," Harry said wryly. Hermione sighed. "That's what's so puzzling. Your immunity seems to have been present your whole life, but you grew up with muggles. How could you have been exposed to anything magical before Hogwarts?" It was a question that would remain unanswered for now, but one that grew increasingly important as the term progressed and no new attacks occurred. The mandrakes needed for the restorative draft were maturing slowly, but until they were ready, the petrified victims remained in the hospital wing, frozen in time. Harry continued to hear the mysterious voice periodically, always whispering about killing, but never when anyone else was present. He'd stopped mentioning it to Ron and Hermione, worried they might think he was going mad. Valentine's Day brought an unwelcome diversion in the form of Lockhart's morale-boosting idea, dwarfs dressed as cupids delivering musical valentines throughout the school. Harry received a particularly embarrassing one in front of a corridor full of people, including Ginny Weasley and Draco Malfoy. In the struggle to escape the determined dwarf, Harry's bag split, spilling his books everywhere. His bottle of ink smashed over everything, including a small, black diary Harry had never seen before. As he gathered his belongings, Malfoy spotted the diary and picked it up. "Give that back," Harry said quietly. "Wonder what Potter's written in this." Malfoy taunted, clearly not noticing it wasn't Harry's handwriting visible on the damp pages. Before Harry could respond, Ginny stared at the diary with a look of pure terror. "Give it back to him, Malfoy," she said in a small voice. "After I've had a look," Malfoy smirked, flipping through the seemingly blank pages with disappointment. "Expelliarmus." Harry cast the disarming charm they'd learned in dueling club, and the diary flew out of Malfoy's hand into the air. Ron caught it, grinning. Later, examining the diary in their dormitory, Harry discovered it had belonged to A.T.M. Riddle 50 years ago, around the time the chamber was last opened. Even more intriguing, despite having been drenched in ink, the pages remained completely clean and unmarked. Curious, Harry tried writing in it, "My name is Harry Potter." The words shone momentarily on the page, then sank without trace. Then, something extraordinary happened. Words appeared on the page, words Harry had not written. "Hello, Harry Potter. My name is Tom Riddle. How did you come by my diary?" That night, through the enchanted diary, Harry experienced Tom Riddle's memory of catching the person who had opened the chamber 50 years ago. To Harry's shock, it was Hagrid, who had supposedly been raising a dangerous monster in the castle. "It can't be Hagrid," Harry told Ron and Hermione the next morning. "He'd never hurt Muggleborns." "But you said the monster Hagrid had was hairy with lots of legs," Ron pointed out. "That doesn't sound like the same creature that's petrifying people now." "The question is," Hermione said thoughtfully, "why would Riddle show you that memory specifically? There's something off about a diary that writes back." Harry had to agree. There was something unsettling about the way Riddle's memory had seemed almost eager to blame Hagrid. With Easter holidays approaching and second years needing to select subjects for third year, the trio temporarily shelved the mystery of the chamber. But fate had other plans. Returning to the dormitory one evening, Harry discovered his belongings ransacked, and Riddle's diary missing. It had to be a Gryffindor, Hermione reasoned. Nobody else knows our password. Unless it wasn't a student, Harry said slowly, thinking of house elves and their ability to apparate within Hogwarts. Before they could investigate further, the Easter holidays ended, and with them, the brief respite from attacks. Harry was heading to a Quidditch match when he heard it again, the voice, the cold, murderous voice, "Kill this time, let me rip, tear." He stopped dead, clutching the stone wall, listening with all his might. He looked around frantically, but the corridor was empty. "Harry, what's wrong?" Ron asked, alarmed. The voice. "I just heard it again, it's going to kill someone." Hermione clapped a hand to her forehead. "Harry, I think I've understood something. I've got to go to the library." She sprinted away, leaving Harry and Ron baffled. They continued to the Quidditch pitch, only to find the match cancelled by a grim-faced Professor McGonagall. "There has been another attack." "Another double attack," she announced to the assembled Gryffindors. "Potter, Weasley, I think you'd better come with me." She led them not to the hospital wing, but to the infirmary. "This may be a bit of a shock," she warned. Hermione Granger was found near the library. Along with this girl. Penelope Clearwater, a Ravenclaw prefect, lay rigid and still in one bed. In the other was Hermione, her eyes open and glassy, a small circular mirror clutched in her frozen hand. "They were found near the library," Professor McGonagall said. "Do either of you have any idea why Hermione had this mirror?" Harry and Ron shook their heads, too shocked to speak. "I must escort you back to Gryffindor Tower," McGonagall continued. "New security measures are being implemented. Students must return to their house common rooms by 6 o'clock every evening. No student leaves the dormitories after that time. You will be escorted to each lesson by a teacher. All Quidditch training and matches are postponed, and there will be no more evening activities." The school existed in a state of fear after that. With Hermione petrified, Harry and Ron were more determined than ever to solve the mystery, starting with a visit to Hagrid. But when they arrived at his hut under the invisibility cloak, they discovered Cornelius Fudge, the Minister of Magic, had come to take Hagrid to Azkaban prison as a precautionary measure. Worse still, Lucius Malfoy arrived with an order of suspension for Dumbledore, signed by the school governors. Before being led away, Hagrid left them a cryptic message: "Follow the spiders." Over the next few days, Harry and Ron noticed spiders fleeing the castle, moving in an unnaturally straight line toward the Forbidden Forest. Finally mustering their courage, they followed the arachnid trail deep into the forest, only to discover the spiders were heading toward Aragog, an enormous acromantula Hagrid had raised since it was an egg. "Hagrid has never sent men into our hollow before," Aragog said suspiciously from his web-draped nest. "He's in trouble," Harry explained. "That's why we've come. There've been attacks on students at the school, and they think it's Hagrid. Like they did 50 years ago." Aragog clicked his pincers angrily. "That was years ago. They made Hagrid leave the school for it. They believe that I was the monster that dwells in what they call the Chamber of Secrets. They thought Hagrid had opened the chamber and set me free." "And you, didn't come from the chamber?" Harry asked, heart pounding. "I." Aragog clicked angrily. "I was not born in the castle. I come from a distant land. A traveler gave me to Hagrid when I was an egg. He cared for me, hidden in a cupboard in the castle, feeding me on scraps. When I was discovered, and blamed for the death of a girl, Hagrid protected me and brought me here." "So you never attacked anyone?" "Never," the old spider croaked. "It would have been my instinct, but out of respect for Hagrid, I never harmed a human. The body of the girl who was killed was discovered in a bathroom. I never saw any part of the castle but the cupboard in which I grew up." "Do you know what did kill that girl?" Harry asked. Because whatever it is, it's back and attacking people again. Aragog's response sent chills down Harry's spine. The thing that lives in the castle is an ancient creature we spiders fear above all others. When I sensed it moving through the school 50 years ago, I begged Hagrid to let me go. We do not speak of it. We do not name it. What is it? Harry pressed. But Aragog was retreating into his domed web, and his children were advancing on Harry and Ron from all sides. They barely escaped with their lives, saved only by the timely arrival of the Weasleys' rogue car, which had apparently gone wild in the Forbidden Forest. Back in the safety of their dormitory, Harry and Ron pieced together what they'd learned. A girl died last time, Harry summarized. Killed in a bathroom. What if she never left? Ron's eyes widened. Moaning Myrtle. Before they could investigate this lead, an announcement echoed through the corridors. Professor McGonagall informed them that the mandrakes were finally ready, and the petrified victims would be revived that evening. But then, a second announcement: all students returned to their house dormitories at once. All teachers to the staff room. Immediately, please. Racing to the staff room under the invisibility cloak, Harry and Ron overheard the terrible news: Ginny Weasley had been taken into the chamber itself. A message had been left: her skeleton will lie in the chamber forever. As the staff dispersed to search the school, Harry and Ron made a desperate decision: they would find Moaning Myrtle and ask her how she died. With this information and Lockhart's supposed expertise in fighting monsters, he'd been tasked with entering the chamber. They might stand a chance of saving Ginny. Myrtle, delighted to be asked about her death, confirmed their suspicions. She'd died in her bathroom stall after hearing a boy speaking a strange language, and the last thing she'd seen were a pair of great, yellow eyes near the sinks. Examining the sinks, Harry found one with a tiny snake scratched on the side of a copper tap. On an impulse, he spoke to it in Parseltongue: "Open up." The sink began to move, sinking out of sight to reveal a large pipe wide enough for a person to slide into, the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets. Deciding to force the fraud Lockhart to accompany them, they'd overheard him preparing to flee. Harry and Ron marched to his office and disarmed him. At one point, they escorted him to Myrtle's bathroom and the open pipe. "After you," Harry said, pointing his wand at Lockhart. "Boys," Lockhart said, voice feeble. "Boys, what good will it do?" Harry jabbed him in the back with his wand, and Lockhart slid his legs into the pipe. "I really don't think," he started to say, but Ron gave him a push, and he slid out of sight. Harry followed quickly, then Ron. It was like rushing down an endless, slimy, dark slide. They landed in a damp tunnel large enough to stand in, lined with rat skeletons. Following the tunnel, they discovered an enormous snakeskin, at least 20 feet long, lying curled and empty across their path. "Blimey," Ron whispered weakly. Then Lockhart, seizing his chance, lunged at Ron and grabbed his wand. "The adventure ends here, boys. I shall take a bit of this skin back up to the school, tell them I was too late to save the girl, and that you two tragically lost your minds at the sight of her mangled body. Say goodbye to your memories." He raised Ron's broken wand and yelled, "Obliviate." The wand exploded with the force of a small bomb. Harry flung his arms over his head and ran, slipping over the coils of snakeskin, out of the way of great chunks of tunnel ceiling falling. Next moment, he was standing alone at the edge of a solid wall of broken rock. "Ron," he shouted. "Are you okay?" "I'm here," came Ron's muffled voice from behind the rockfall. "I'm okay, this gets not, though," he got blasted by the wand. "What now?" "Wait here," Harry called. "Try to shift some of this rock so we can get back through. I'll go on and find Ginny." "Okay," Ron's voice sounded scared but determined. Heart hammering, Harry continued alone until he reached a solid wall on which two entwined serpents were carved, their eyes set with great, glinting emeralds. He approached, throat dry, and spoke in Parseltongue: "Open." The serpents parted as the wall cracked open, the halves slid smoothly out of sight, and Harry, shaking from head to foot, walked inside. He stood at the end of a long, dimly lit chamber. Towering stone pillars entwined with carved serpents rose to a ceiling lost in darkness. At the far end, a giant statue of Salazar Slytherin loomed against the wall. And between the statue's feet, a small, black-robed figure with flaming red hair lay face down. Ginny! Harry sprinted to her and dropped to his knees. Ginny, don't be dead, please don't be dead, he turned her over. Her face was white as marble, and as cold, yet her eyes were closed, so she wasn't petrified. Ginny, please wake up, Harry muttered desperately, shaking her. She won't wake, said a soft voice. Harry jumped and turned on his knees. A tall, black-haired boy was leaning against the nearest pillar, watching. He was strangely blurred around the edges, as though Harry were looking at him through a misted window. Tom Riddle. Riddle nodded, not taking his eyes off Harry's face. What do you mean, she won't wake? Harry asked desperately. She's not. She's still alive, Riddle said. But only just. Harry stared at him. Tom Riddle had been at Hogwarts 50 years ago, yet here he stood, a weird, misty light shining about him, not a day older than 16. Are you a ghost? Harry asked uncertainly. A memory, Riddle replied quietly. Preserved in a diary for 50 years. He pointed toward the floor near the statue's giant toes. The black diary Harry had found, and subsequently lost, lay open there. You've got to help me, Tom, Harry said, raising Ginny's head again. We've got to get her out of here. There's a basilisk. I don't know where it is, but it could come along any moment. Riddle didn't move. Harry struggled to hoist Ginny half off the floor, and reached for his wand, which was gone. Did you see? He looked up. Riddle was twirling Harry's wand between his fingers, a peculiar smile playing around his mouth. Thanks, said Harry, stretching out his hand for it. Riddle's smile broadened. You won't be needing it, he said coolly. Harry stared at him. What you mean, I won't be? I've waited a long time for this, Harry Potter, Riddle said. For the chance to see you. To speak to you. Look, Harry said, losing patience, I don't think you get it. We're in the Chamber of Secrets. We can talk later. We're going to talk now, Riddle said, still smiling broadly, and he pocketed Harry's wand. A horrible realization dawned on Harry. How did Ginny get like this? Well, that's an interesting question, Riddle said pleasantly. And quite a long story. I suppose the real reason Ginny Weasley's like this is because she opened her heart and spilled all her secrets to an invisible stranger. What are you talking about? Harry demanded. The diary, Riddle explained. My diary. Little Ginny's been writing in it for months, telling me all her pitiful worries and woes. And I wrote back. I was sympathetic, I was kind. Ginny simply loved me. No one's ever understood me like you, Tom. I'm so glad I've got this diary to confide in. It's like having a friend I can carry around in my pocket. Riddle laughed, a high, cold laugh that sent chills down Harry's spine. If I say it myself, Harry, I've always been able to charm the people I needed. So Ginny poured out her soul to me, and her soul happened to be exactly what I wanted. I grew stronger and stronger on a diet of her deepest fears, her darkest secrets. I grew powerful enough to start feeding Miss Weasley a few of my secrets, to start pouring a little of my soul back into her. What you mean? Harry's mouth had gone very dry. Haven't you guessed yet? Riddle asked softly. Ginny Weasley opened the Chamber of Secrets. She strangled the school roosters and daubed threatening messages on the walls. She set the Serpent of Slytherin on 4 mudbloods, and the Squib's cat. No, Harry whispered. Yes, Riddle calmly continued. Of course, she didn't know what she was doing. She was in a kind of trance. Still, the power of the diary began to scare her, so she tried to dispose of it. And that's where you came in. You found it, and I couldn't have been more delighted. Of all the people who could have picked it up, it was you, the very person I was most anxious to meet. And why did you want to meet me? Harry asked, anger rising. Well, you see, Ginny told me all about you, Harry. Your whole fascinating history. I knew I must find out more about you, talk to you, meet you if I could. So I decided to show you my famous capture of that great oaf, Hagrid, to gain your trust. Hagrid's my friend, Harry interrupted, voice shaking. And you framed him, didn't you? Riddle laughed again. It was my word against Hagrid's. Only Dumbledore seemed to think he was innocent. But Dumbledore couldn't keep me from being awarded a shiny special award for services to the school, or convince the other teachers that Hagrid was innocent. I bet Dumbledore saw right through you, Harry said, teeth gritted. He certainly kept an annoyingly close watch on me after Hagrid was expelled, Riddle agreed carelessly. I knew it wouldn't be safe to open the chamber again while I was still at school. So I decided to leave behind a diary, preserving my 16-year-old self in its pages, so that one day, I would be able to lead another in my footsteps and finish Salazar Slytherin's noble work. Well, you haven't finished it, Harry replied triumphantly. No one's died this time, not even the cat. In a few hours the Mandrake draft will be ready, and everyone who was petrified will be all right again. Haven't I already told you, Riddle interrupted quietly, that killing mudbloods doesn't matter to me anymore. For many months now, my new target has been, you. Harry stared at him. Imagine how angry I was when the next time my diary was opened, it was Ginny who was writing to me, not you. She saw you with the diary, you see, and panicked. But there are other ways to dispose of you. Ginny wrote to me about your fascinating immunity to harm, Harry. How spells bounce off you, how poisons don't affect you, how you survived a killing curse as a baby. Riddle's eyes gleamed with fascination. So I decided on a new plan. I had Ginny write her own farewell on the wall and come down here to wait. She struggled and cried, but there isn't much life left in her. She put too much into the diary, into me. Enough to let me leave its pages at last. And now I have questions for you, Harry Potter. How is it that you, a skinny boy with no extraordinary magical talent, managed to defeat the greatest wizard of all time? How did you escape with nothing but a scar, while Lord Voldemort's powers were destroyed? Why do you care how I escaped? Harry asked slowly. Voldemort was after your time. Voldemort, Riddle said softly, is my past, present, and future, Harry Potter. He pulled Harry's wand from his pocket and traced it through the air, writing 3 shimmering words, Tom Marvolo Riddle. Then he waved the wand once, and the letters rearranged themselves. I am Lord Voldemort, you see, he whispered. It was a name I was already using at Hogwarts, to my most intimate friends only, of course. You think I was going to use my filthy Muggle father's name forever? I, in whose veins runs the blood of Salazar Slytherin himself, through my mother's side. I, keep the name of a foul, common Muggle, who abandoned me even before I was born, just because he found out his wife was a witch? No, Harry, I fashioned myself a new name, a name I knew wizards everywhere would one day fear to speak, when I had become the greatest sorcerer in the world. Harry's brain seemed to have jammed. He stared numbly at Riddle, at the orphan boy who had grown up to murder Harry's own parents, and so many others. At last he forced himself to speak. You're not, he said, voice full of hatred. Not what? Riddle snapped. Not the greatest sorcerer in the world, Harry said, breathing fast. Sorry to disappoint you, but the greatest wizard in the world is Albus Dumbledore. Everyone says so. Even when you were strong, you didn't dare try to take over Hogwarts. Dumbledore saw through you when you were at school, and he still frightens you now, wherever you're hiding these days, Riddle's face contorted. Then he forced a terrible smile. Dumbledore's been driven out of this castle by the mere memory of me. He's not as gone as you might think. Harry retorted. Music was coming from somewhere. Riddle whirled around to stare down the empty chamber. The music grew louder, unearthly and spine-tingling. A crimson bird the size of a swan appeared, piping its weird music to the vaulted ceiling. It had a glittering golden tail as long as a peacock's and gleaming golden talons, which were gripping a ragged bundle. A second later, the bird was flying straight at Harry. It dropped the ragged thing it was carrying at his feet, then landed heavily on his shoulder. As it folded its great wings, Harry looked up and saw it had a long, sharp golden beak and a beady black eye. "That's a phoenix," Riddle said, staring shrewdly at it. "Fox?" Harry breathed. "And that," Riddle eyed the ragged thing Fox had dropped, "that's the old-school sorting hat," so it was. Patched, frayed, and dirty, the hat lay motionless at Harry's feet. Riddle began to laugh. "This is what Dumbledore sends his defender. A songbird and an old hat. Do you feel brave, Harry Potter? Do you feel safe now?" Harry didn't answer. He didn't see what use Fox or the sorting hat would be, but at least he wasn't alone, and he waited for Riddle to stop laughing. "To business, Harry," Riddle said, still smiling broadly. "I'm going to teach you a little lesson. Let's match the powers of Lord Voldemort, heir of Salazar Slytherin, against famous Harry Potter, with his mysterious immunity." He turned to look up at Slytherin's stone face, hissing words in Parseltongue. "Speak to me, Slytherin, greatest of the Hogwarts Four." Slytherin's gigantic stone face was moving. His mouth opened wider and wider, to make a huge black hole, and something was stirring inside, something huge slithering up from its depths. Harry backed away, eyes shut tight. The basilisk's gaze meant instant death. He heard Riddle's hissing command, "Kill him." The enormous serpent hit the stone floor with a thud that made the chamber tremble. Harry could sense it coming toward him and ran blindly sideways, hands outstretched, Fox fluttering overhead. The basilisk lunged, and missed. Harry crashed into a wall, tasting blood where he'd bitten his tongue. Then something heavy hit him so hard he was smashed into the wall. Waiting for fangs to sink into him, he heard instead the sound of the basilisk thrashing wildly against the pillars. He squinted and saw Fox soaring around the basilisk's head, while the serpent snapped furiously at him with fangs long and thin as sabers. Fox dived. His golden beak disappeared, and a sudden shower of dark blood spattered the floor. The snake's tail whipped across the floor, narrowly missing Harry. "No!" Riddle screamed. "Leave the bird! Leave the bird! The boy is behind you. You can still smell him. Kill him!" Harry stood trembling as the blinded basilisk swayed, confused but still deadly. Fox circled its head, singing his eerie song, jabbing at its scales, reminding it where Harry was. The giant snake's head was weaving, its body coiling around itself in confusion. Riddle screamed again, "Kill the boy. He's right there. Smell him." The basilisk lunged blindly. Harry dodged, and it hit the chamber wall. It lunged again, and its forked tongue lashed Harry's side. He suddenly felt a sharp, searing pain. One of the basilisk's fangs had grazed him, tearing his robes and cutting into his flesh. The cut burned like fire, but strangely, the pain began to fade almost immediately. The wound, which should have been poisoned by the basilisk's deadly venom, was already closing. Riddle's eyes widened in shock. "Impossible. Basilisk venom has no cure except—" He stopped, staring at Harry with dawning comprehension and fury. The basilisk lunged again. Harry grabbed the sorting hat in desperation and crammed it onto his head, silently pleading for help. Something hard and heavy thudded onto his head, nearly knocking him out. He grabbed the top of the hat to pull it off and felt something long and hard beneath. A gleaming silver sword had appeared inside the hat, its handle glittering with rubies. "Kill him! Kill him!" Riddle was shrieking. The basilisk lunged once more. Harry threw his whole weight behind the sword and drove it to the hilt into the roof of the serpent's mouth. But as warm blood drenched Harry's arms, he felt a searing pain just above his elbow. One long, poisonous fang was sinking deeper and deeper into his arm. It shattered as the basilisk keeled over sideways and fell, twitching, to the floor. Harry slid down the wall, gripping the thong that had embedded itself in his arm and wrenched it out. But he knew it was too late, the poison was already spreading. Except, it wasn't. Just as with the grazing wound earlier, the pain began to subside almost immediately. Where basilisk venom should have been coursing through his veins, bringing swift death, Harry felt only a lingering ache. The puncture wound was already closing, knitting itself together before his eyes. "No!" Riddle shouted, advancing on Harry with a look of fury and fascination. "What are you? How are you alive? Basilisk venom kills within minutes. Nothing can neutralize it except..." His eyes widened with sudden understanding. "Phoenix tears have healing powers. Did Dumbledore give you..." He stopped, an entirely new thought occurring to him. Or perhaps, something else. Something older. Harry staggered to his feet, the sword of Gryffindor still clutched in his hand, Fawkes circling overhead. The wound on his arm had completely sealed, leaving only a faint scar. "It doesn't matter," Riddle said coldly, regaining his composure. "I preferred it this way. Just you and me, Harry Potter, you and me." He raised Harry's wand and was about to cast a spell when Fawkes swooped down, dropping the diary into Harry's lap. For a split second, both Harry and Riddle, wands still raised, stared at it. Then, without thinking, without considering, Harry seized the basilisk thong on the floor next to him and plunged it straight into the heart of the diary. There was a long, dreadful, piercing scream. Ink spurted out of the diary in torrents, streaming over Harry's hands, flooding the floor. Riddle was writhing and twisting, screaming and flailing, and then, he had gone. The chamber fell silent except for the steady drip of ink from the diary. The basilisk venom had burned a sizzling hole right through it. Shaking, Harry collected the sword, the hat, and the diary, then hurried to Ginny, who was stirring feebly. As her eyes opened, her confused gaze traveled from the huge form of the dead basilisk, to Harry, in his blood-soaked robes, then to the diary in his hand. She drew a great, shuddering gasp and tears began to pour down her face. "Harry, oh, Harry, I tried to tell you at breakfast, but I couldn't say it in front of Percy. It was me, Harry, but I swear I didn't mean to. Our Riddle made me, he took me over, and, how did you kill that thing?" "Where's Riddle?" "The last thing I remember is him coming out of the diary. It's all right." Harry held up the diary, showing her the hole in the center. "Riddle's finished. Look. Him and the basilisk. Come on, Ginny, let's get out of here, I'm going to be expelled." Ginny wept as Harry helped her up. "I've looked forward to coming to Hogwarts ever since Bill came, and now I'll have to leave and, what'll Mum and Dad say?" Fawkes was waiting for them, hovering in the chamber entrance. Harry urged Ginny forward, they stepped over the motionless coils of the dead basilisk, through the echoing gloom, and back into the tunnel. As they approached the rockfall, Ron's eager face appeared in a sizable gap he'd managed to make. "Ginny!" He thrust an arm through the gap to pull her through first. "You're alive. I don't believe it. What happened? How, where did that bird come from?" Fawkes had swooped through the gap after Ginny. "He's Dumbledore's," Harry explained, squeezing through himself. "How come you've got a sword?" Ron gaped, pointing at the glittering weapon in Harry's hand. "I'll explain later," Harry said with a quick glance at Ginny, who was crying harder than ever. "Where's Lockhart?" "Back there," Ron jerked his head up the tunnel. "He's in a bad way. Come and see." Led by Fawkes, whose scarlet and gold plumage glowed in the darkness, they walked up the tunnel until they reached the pipe that led back to Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. "How are we going to get back up there?" Ron asked, craning his neck to look at the faraway opening. Fawkes the Phoenix swooped past Harry and fluttered in front of him, his beady eyes bright in the dark. He was waving his long golden tail feathers. "He looks like he wants you to grab hold," Ron said, looking perplexed. "But you're much too heavy for a bird to pull up there," Fox, Harry explained, isn't an ordinary bird. He turned quickly to the others. We've got to hold on to each other. Ginny, grab Ron's hand. Professor Lockhart, he means you, Ron told the amnesiac Lockhart sharply. You hold Ginny's other hand. Harry tucked the sword and the sorting hat into his belt. Ron took hold of the back of Harry's robes, and Harry reached out and took hold of Fox's strangely hot tail feathers. An extraordinary lightness seemed to spread through his whole body, and the next second, in a rush of wings, they were flying upward through the pipe. Harry heard Lockhart dangling below him, saying, "Amazing. Amazing. This is just like magic." The chill air was whipping through Harry's hair, and before he'd stopped enjoying the ride, it was over. They had landed on the wet floor of Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, and as Lockhart straightened his hat, the sink that hid the pipe was sliding back into place. Myrtle goggled at them. "You're alive," she said blankly to Harry. "There's no need to sound so disappointed," he said grimly, wiping flecks of blood and slime off his glasses. "Oh, well. I'd just been thinking. If you had died, you'd have been welcome to share my toilet," said Myrtle, blushing silver. "Ugh!" Ron exclaimed as they left the bathroom. "Harry! I think Myrtle's grown fond of you. You've got competition, Ginny." But Ginny wasn't listening. Fresh tears were flooding silently down her face. "Where now?" Ron asked, looking at Ginny with concern. Harry pointed to Fox, who was leading the way down the corridor, glowing gold along the dark passage. They followed him to Professor McGonagall's office. Harry knocked and pushed the door open. For a moment there was silence as Harry, Ron, Ginny, and Lockhart stood in the doorway, covered in muck and slime and, in Harry's case, blood. Then there was a scream. "Ginny!" It was Mrs. Weasley, who had been sitting crying in front of the fire. She leapt to her feet, closely followed by Mr. Weasley, and both of them flung themselves on their daughter. But Harry's eyes were fixed on the person standing behind the desk, Professor Dumbledore, beaming, with Fox now perched on his shoulder. Next to him stood Professor McGonagall, who was taking great, steadying gasps, clutching her chest. As Harry, Ron, and Lockhart entered, Fox left Dumbledore's shoulder and flew to Harry, who finally noticed a tiny, almost imperceptible vial hanging from the phoenix's leg, a vial containing what looked like a few drops of blood. His blood, Harry realized with a jolt. From the wound the basilisk had made, which had healed so rapidly. Somehow, when Fox had flown around him in the chamber, the phoenix had collected a sample. Before Harry could react, Mrs. Weasley had swept him and Ron into a tight embrace. "You saved her. You saved her. How did you do it?" "I think we'd all like to know that," Professor McGonagall said weakly. "Mrs. Weasley let go of Harry, and he hesitated for a moment, then walked over to the desk and laid upon it the sorting hat, the ruby-encrusted sword, and what remained of Riddle's diary. Then he started telling them everything, the voices he'd been hearing, how Hermione had figured out it was a basilisk, how he and Ron had followed the spiders into the forest, how Fox had arrived just in time. "Very well," Professor McGonagall prompted as he paused, "so you found out where the entrance was, breaking 100 school rules into pieces along the way, I might add, but how on earth did you get out of there alive, Potter?" Harry explained about Fox's timely arrival and the sorting hat giving him the sword. But then he faltered. He had so far avoided mentioning Riddle's diary, or Ginny. She was standing with her head against Mrs. Weasley's shoulder, her face still streaked with tears. What if they expelled her? Dumbledore, however, smiled gently. "What interests me most is how Lord Voldemort managed to enchant Ginny, when my sources tell me he is currently in hiding in the forests of Albania." Relief, warm, sweeping, glorious relief, swept over Harry. What's that?" Mr. Weasley asked in a stunned voice. "You know who? Enchant Ginny." "But Ginny's not. Ginny hasn't been, has she?" "It was this diary," Harry said quickly, picking it up and showing it to Dumbledore. "Riddle wrote in it when he was 16. Dumbledore took the diary from Harry and peered keenly at its burnt and soggy pages. "Brilliant," he said softly. Of course, he was probably the most brilliant student Hogwarts has ever seen. He turned to the Weasleys, who looked utterly bewildered. Very few people know that Lord Voldemort was once called Tom Riddle. I taught him myself, 50 years ago, at Hogwarts. He disappeared after leaving the school, traveled far and wide. Sank so deeply into the dark arts, consorted with the very worst of our kind, underwent so many dangerous, magical transformations, that when he resurfaced as Lord Voldemort, he was barely recognizable. "But, Ginny," Mrs. Weasley said. "What's our Ginny got to do with him?" "His diary," Ginny sobbed. "I've been writing in it, and he's been writing back all year, Ginny." Mr. Weasley flared. "Haven't I taught you anything? What have I always told you? Never trust anything that can think for itself if you can't see where it keeps its brain." "I didn't know," Ginny wept. "I found it inside one of the books Mum got me. I thought someone had just left it in there and forgotten about it." "Miss Weasley should go up to the hospital wing right away," Dumbledore interrupted firmly. "This has been a terrible ordeal for her. There will be no punishment. Older and wiser wizards than she have been hoodwinked by Lord Voldemort." He crossed to the door and opened it. "Bed rest and perhaps a large, steaming mug of hot chocolate. I always find that cheers me up," he added, twinkling kindly down at her. "You will find that Madame Pomfrey is still awake. She's just giving out mandrake juice. I dare say the basilisk's victims will be waking up any moment." "So Hermione's okay?" Ron said brightly. "There has been no lasting harm done, Ginny," Dumbledore assured her. Mrs. Weasley led Ginny out, followed by Mr. Weasley, still looking deeply shaken. Lockhart was sent to the hospital wing as well, and Ron was dispatched to send an owl ordering Hagrid's release from Azkaban. This left Harry alone with Dumbledore. The headmaster crossed to one of the chairs by the fire. "Sit down, Harry," he said, and Harry sat, feeling unaccountably nervous. "First of all, Harry, I want to thank you," Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. "You must have shown me real loyalty down in the chamber. Nothing but that could have called Fawkes to you." He stroked the phoenix, which had fluttered down onto his knee, including the small vial still attached to its leg. Dumbledore carefully detached it, examining the red liquid inside thoughtfully. "And so you met Tom Riddle," he continued. "I imagine he was most interested in you." "Professor," Harry started, eyes on the vial, "when the basilisk bit me. I should have died, shouldn't I?" Riddle said basilisk venom kills within minutes. "But my wound just healed itself." Dumbledore studied Harry over his half-moon spectacles. "Indeed. Most curious. Basilisk venom is among the most deadly substances in our world, with only one known antidote, phoenix tears. But Fawkes didn't cry on my wound. It started healing immediately, just like with other injuries." "Yes," Dumbledore nodded slowly. "Your immunity remains a fascinating mystery. I noticed Fawkes collected a sample of your blood, perhaps he sensed its unique properties. Tell me, Harry, did Tom recognize your immunity's significance?" "He was shocked at first," Harry recalled. "Then he looked like he'd figured something out. He asked if you'd given me something, then stopped and said, or perhaps something else, something older." "Did he indeed?" Dumbledore's eyes gleamed with intense interest. "Most revealing. Do you know what he meant, sir?" Dumbledore twirled the vial of blood between his long fingers. "I have a theory, one that Tom Riddle, with his obsessive study of ancient magic, might have recognized. There are certain magical substances, Harry, that when ingested at crucial developmental stages, can bond with a wizard's magical core. Bezoars, for instance." "Bezoars?" Harry repeated. "Aren't those just antidotes to poisons? We learned about them in potions." "Ordinarily, yes. A bezoar from a goat's stomach can counteract most poisons when ingested after exposure. But there are historical accounts of individuals who somehow ingested bezoars as infants and developed permanent immunity to not just poisons, but many forms of harmful magic. Harry stared. You think I swallowed a bezoar as a baby? It would explain your remarkable resilience, Dumbledore said. Such cases are exceedingly rare, the last documented occurrence was nearly 3 centuries ago. The witch in question lived to be 246 years old, surviving numerous magical attacks that would have killed any ordinary person. But how would I have gotten a bezoar? The Dursleys don't have magical objects. No, Dumbledore agreed. But your parents did. Your father was particularly cautious, he kept emergency potion supplies in your home, including, I would wager, bezoars. Harry's mind reeled. A simple stone, swallowed by accident as a curious baby, had changed his entire magical makeup. Is that why spells don't hurt me either? Not all spells, Dumbledore corrected. Your immunity has limits. It seems to protect against direct harm, but not against all magic. Ropes can still bind you, for instance. And I suspect certain dark curses would still affect you, though perhaps not as severely as others. Riddle seemed very interested in my blood, Harry said, nodding at the vial. He told Malfoy to try to get a sample. Dumbledore's expression grew grave. That is concerning. Blood containing such rare magical properties would be extremely valuable for various potions and rituals, particularly dark ones. I believe Fawkes collected this sample to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. But Fawkes took it anyway, Harry pointed out. Why? A good question. Dumbledore stroked his beard thoughtfully. Perhaps to study its properties, to help us understand your unique condition better. Or perhaps as a precaution, blood freely given for protection is very different from blood forcibly taken for dark purposes. He placed the vial carefully in a drawer of McGonagall's desk. I will ensure this is kept securely. In the meantime, Harry, I suggest you continue to be cautious about who knows the extent of your immunity. As you've seen this year, it can make you a target of curiosity, or worse. Harry nodded, then asked the question that had been bothering him since his first conversation with the Sorting Hat. Professor, Riddle said we're alike. The Sorting Hat said I'd do well in Slytherin. Is that why I can speak Parseltongue? You can speak Parseltongue, Harry, because Lord Voldemort, the last remaining descendant of Salazar Slytherin, can speak Parseltongue. Unless I'm much mistaken, he transferred some of his own powers to you the night he gave you that scar. Not something he intended to do, I'm sure. Voldemort put a bit of himself in me? Harry asked, thunderstruck. It certainly seems so. But your immunity, Harry, that is entirely your own, a rare gift that predates your encounter with Voldemort. And in the chamber, both gifts served you well. You used Parseltongue to open the chamber, and your immunity protected you from the basilisk's venom. So the Sorting Hat was right, Harry said. I should have been in Slytherin. The Sorting Hat placed you in Gryffindor, Dumbledore said calmly. And as I recall telling you once before, it is our choices that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities. If you want proof that you belong in Gryffindor, Harry, look at this. Dumbledore reached across to McGonagall's desk, picked up the blood-stained silver sword, and handed it to Harry. Dully, Harry turned it over, the rubies blazing in the firelight. And then he saw the name engraved just below the hilt, Godric Gryffindor. Only a true Gryffindor could have pulled that out of the hat, Harry, Dumbledore said simply. Harry sat in silence for several minutes, then finally said, Thank you, Professor. You're most welcome, Harry. Now, I suggest you head to the hospital wing, purely as a precaution, of course. I expect there's quite a celebration happening in Gryffindor Tower, and it would be a shame for you to miss it. But I do want Madame Pomfrey to have a look at that arm, miraculous healing or not. Harry stood up and crossed to the door. He had just reached for the handle, however, when the door burst open so violently that it bounced back off the wall. Lucius Malfoy stood there, fury in his face. And cowering behind his legs, heavily wrapped in bandages, was Dobby. Good evening, Lucius, Dumbledore said pleasantly. Mr. Malfoy almost knocked Harry over as he swept into the room. Dobby followed, crouching at the hem of his cloak, a look of abject terror on his face. So, Lucius Malfoy said, his cold eyes fixed on Dumbledore. You've come back. The governors suspended you, but you still saw fit to return to Hogwarts. Well, you see, Lucius, Dumbledore smiled serenely, the other 11 governors contacted me today. It was something like being caught in a hailstorm of owls, to tell the truth. They'd heard that Arthur Weasley's daughter had been killed and wanted me back here at once. They seemed to think I was the best man for the job after all. Very strange tales they told me, too. Several of them seemed to think that you had threatened to curse their families if they didn't agree to suspend me in the first place. Mr. Malfoy went even paler than usual, but his eyes were still slits of fury. So, have you stopped the attacks yet? Have you caught the culprit? We have, Dumbledore said, with a smile. Well? Mr. Malfoy demanded sharply. Who is it? The same person as last time, Lucius, Dumbledore answered. But this time, Lord Voldemort was acting through somebody else. By means of this diary. He held up the small black book with the large hole through the center, watching Mr. Malfoy closely. Harry, however, was watching Dobby. The elf was doing something very odd. His great eyes fixed meaningfully on Harry, he kept pointing at the diary, then at Mr. Malfoy, and then hitting himself hard on the head with his fist. And suddenly, Harry understood. He nodded at Dobby, and the elf backed into a corner, twisting his ears in punishment. I see. Lucius Malfoy said slowly to Dumbledore. A clever plan, Dumbledore said conversationally. Because if Harry here, Mr. Malfoy shot Harry a swift, sharp look, and his friend Ron hadn't discovered this book, why, Ginny Weasley might have taken all the blame. No one would ever have been able to prove she hadn't acted of her own free will. Mr. Malfoy said nothing. His face was suddenly mask-like. And imagine, Dumbledore went on, what might have happened then. The Weasleys are one of our most prominent pure-blood families. Imagine the effect on Arthur Weasley and his Muggle Protection Act, if his own daughter was discovered attacking and killing Muggleborns. Very fortunate the diary was discovered, and Riddle's memories wiped from it. Who knows what the consequences might have been otherwise? Mr. Malfoy forced himself to speak. Very fortunate, he said stiffly. Don't you want to know how Ginny got hold of that diary, Mr. Malfoy? Harry asked. Lucius Malfoy rounded on him. How should I know how the stupid little girl got hold of it, he said. Because you gave it to her, Harry said. In flourish and blots. You picked up her old Transfiguration book and slipped the diary inside it, didn't you? He saw Mr. Malfoy's white hands clench and unclench. Prove it, he hissed. Oh, no one will be able to do that, Dumbledore said, smiling at Harry. Not now that Riddle has vanished from the book. On the other hand, I would advise you, Lucius, not to go giving out any more of Lord Voldemort's old school things. If any more of them find their way into innocent hands, I think Arthur Weasley, for one, will make sure they are traced back to you. Lucius Malfoy stood for a moment, and Harry distinctly saw something went wrong with this response. Please try again. Make to the end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.